Chapter 126, Volatile Battlefield. Hands folded, spiky hair fluttering in the wind, and one leg raised in front in a semi-blocking style. This was how Raditz had countered Cell Max. He was standing mid-air with a smile on his face, and as Cell stared in shock at his attack being blocked so easily, Raditz narrowed his eyes. Swish. Spinning around as if he was standing on clear ice, Raditz smoothly removed his leg from the blocking position and raised his hand, in which a large erasure cannon took shape mid-spin, which Raditz threw like a cannonball on Cell's head. Boom. Causing Cell's head to spontaneous combust, getting erased from existence just like the attack's name would suggest. Cell Max stumbled backwards without a head, but his body still didn't fall down. Cell's hands tried to grab his head by instinct but only managed to grab a stump, causing Cell to stagger back once more, but his panicked state didn't last long. The flesh on his stump unnaturally squished inwards, as if something was hiding inside his torso. Squelch. And just like that, a brand new head popped out of Cell's next stump, like it was hiding in his torso all along. Raditz looked at the display and thought to himself, Majin Buu and Zamasu's immortality far outclasses this, not to mention this is pretty gross. Of course, if it was more useful, Raditz won't care if it was gross, but even in usefulness it was far behind the other two. Huff huff huff. Cell Max, who had regrown his head, was scared and panting. This was another attack he couldn't block. What if it wasn't just his head next time? Raditz. Cell growled, looking at the waiting Raditz. He wasn't pleased at Raditz's display of skill. He felt like a newbie who was being played around by a senior martial artist. Cell didn't like this feeling. But even in a situation like this, he still didn't panic completely. Raditz, you are very strong, much stronger than me. But how long can you last in that form? Cell asked with a shifty look on his face, something which Raditz caught onto and raised his eyebrows. I can last in this form for 30 minutes. What of it? And just like that, for a good fight, Goku's personality showed itself again, giving away such a crucial detail which Raditz would never have divulged. But once more, Raditz, who was also a part of this fusion, showed his traits. So after he had said this piece of info, his energy had started boiling. He was ready to kill Cell before 30 minutes were over. Cell knew not about this contradictory thinking in his opponent's mind, because all his attention was focused on surviving the upcoming 30 minutes. And he knew only one way he could survive the onslaught. Giving a sadistic look to Raditz, Cell yelled, in a fashion which showed the anger hidden behind his words. What of it? In only 30 minutes, can you kill me? I am Cell. I can regenerate from every wound you can inflict on me. A tiny being like you can never fully eliminate me. I am invincible. Do you hear me? Cell roared, his anger at being nothing but a sandbag showing itself to everyone. But even then, there was an undertone of pride in his words. No matter how much they wanted this to not be true, Cell was indeed correct. Now as Cell Max, he was massive in size. Making sure every single cell of such large creature was erased was really hard. This was something which Raditz had found out as well, it seems, as after hearing Cell's words, his eyes narrowed. You are planning on outlasting me with regeneration. With no further words, Raditz instant transmitted to Cell, creating an eraser cannon with both hands. This had Cell unable to react, and before he could get out of the way, Raditz had unleashed the ever-enlarging erasure cannon upon Cell Max. He had decided to erase Cell, and that was exactly what he was going to do. Ayakak! Cell screamed in terror as he was getting hit by the light green energy. His body was getting destroyed cell by cell, and a searing pain was shooting through him. Sadly, in a few more seconds, the screams stopped abruptly and Cell's body was erased from the world. Did we make it? Asked Krillin in a stammering way. He couldn't sense Cell anymore. So they won, right? The Z fighters also tried to sense Cell, but after a few more seconds, they couldn't anymore. So slowly smiles began to emerge on their faces. We won. We did it. Good job, King Kakarot. The Z fighters celebrated this win happily, but it was only Piccolo and Tien who were concerned, because Raditz hadn't moved from his spot after he had fired off his erasure cannon. In fact, he looked even more serious than before. Not knowing about any of this, Satan and the camera crew started running towards Raditz, trying to get the latest interview. Wait, something's wrong, Piccolo exclaimed, but it fell on deaf ears as the camera crew was hell-bent on getting the latest scoop. So when a small wiggling green mass appeared mid-air, and in a few seconds grew up to the size of a mountain, the crew were flabbergasted and frozen in place. Satan became so scared watching the mass take on the form of Cell that he screamed out in terror, "Boss, save me!" Thankfully his shouts seems to have been heard, as Raditz flickered before the team, collected them with telekinesis and teleported out of Cell Max's reach. Bang! And just in time too, because that was the exact spot Cell Max's newly regenerated body landed on. With a newfound confidence in his regeneration, Cell Max roared, as if all his worries had been resolved. Ha ha ha. You can't kill me, Raditz. And contrary to normal, Raditz didn't counter Cell's words. Cell Max's instincts were right. He was too big to be killed off in a single attack, and when incinerated, the few remaining cells were too hard to find. He was basically impossible to one-shot, which was the only way to kill him. At least it couldn't be done at the level of power gap they were currently at. But the bad news wasn't only this. Raditz looked seriously at Cell while standing with the camera crew, who were taking a close-up shot of this scene, and Cell dropped another piece of news onto them. "You can sense it, can't you, Raditz? That's right. The worse you hurt me, the stronger I'll become. Unless you can kill me before I can regenerate, I will always return stronger. I am the perfect being." Just like in the original, after he had regenerated from a single cell, he had jumped straight to Super Saiyan 2. This time around, Cell had experienced something similar as well, and the cause of all this was Saiyan's innate ability, the Zenkai boost. A Zenkai boost was triggered with grievous wounds. For Saiyan's, this stops being a thing after a certain time, but Cell had significantly improved upon this limitation. Cell had both King Cold's and Piccolo's genes on top of Saiyan genes. Unlike Saiyan's, King Cold's natural body was stronger and his limit higher, and unlike Saiyan's, Piccolo's regeneration can be triggered even when only one cell remained. This makes Cell's Zenkai continue for a much longer time than ours. That means the more I attempt to kill him, the stronger I will make him. Raditz stared at Cell with a frown, and the rest of the Z fighters looked at Cell's newfound power with sweat pouring down their heads. They only hoped the combination of their best fighters could figure something out. They can still do this, all it needs was a plan. A plan to trap Cell so he cannot escape. Chapter 127. Omega Blaster. No matter what the Z fighters thought amongst themselves, Cell himself was overcome with emotion. Even he didn't know he could get stronger from being wounded badly. He was over Cloud 9, because he knew the only remaining way he could die was by getting trapped completely, but he had learned instant transmission just for a case like this. They cannot trap him, they cannot kill him, he was invincible. So staring maliciously at his opponent, Cell smirked. "Raditz, come, let's continue our tournament." But Raditz wasn't going to have any of this. He shook his head in denial and flickered before Cell. Although this time around, Cell could actually keep up with Raditz's speed. And Cell didn't waste time either. With his nails pointed towards Raditz, Cell used his palm like a knife and slashed. This speed. Raditz twitched his eyes. Cell's speed had caught up to him in fused state. And Cell's nails were not something that should be blocked head-on. So Raditz swiftly raised his hands before him. Bang! And a round bubble-like green barrier covered his body, which blocked the hand knife without a single issue. Cell didn't seem to care about this and took his hand back, then immediately started throwing a barrage of slashes with both hands. Bang! 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 Hitting the barrier again and again. This constant onslaught began to finally crack the barrier bit by bit, and all of a sudden, crash. The barrier broke down completely, launching Raditz's body into the mountains, crashing into the rock formations, burying his body into the rubble. "Dad, Uncle Raditz!" Gohan exclaimed with fear. Raditz was hit. How could it be? But Nappa put a hand on top of Gohan's head, stopping the kid's mood swings. "Kid, relax. Raditz isn't out of the game just yet." And true to Nappa's words, the rubble was blasted away, and a completely fine Raditz appeared on the ground, standing without any injuries. He seems to have not felt it at all and just stood there, menacingly. Cell also didn't expect his attack to do nothing at all, and was thus taken aback, but he soon collected himself. "No matter, I can't kill him, and he can't kill me either. But I am perfect, and he is on a time limit. All I have to do is hold dash. Hold on until my time runs out? Is that it, Cell?" "Sorry, you won't get that chance. I don't make the same mistake twice. Remember who you got that trait from, Cell?" Raditz completed Cell's thoughts with a smile. Then before Cell's morphed face, he clenched both of his fists and bent down. "Hiya!" and began to yell. Raditz's energy burst out of him with this yell and continued to climb upwards in an exaggerated fashion. Soon the white aura surrounding him slowly began to flash a golden yellow. The Z fighters looked at this display with open eyes, and Cell exclaimed with fear. "No, impossible. How can you go Super Saiyan?" Raditz was never able to go Super Saiyan. This was a piece of information Cell knew very well. He had also speculated after his recent Cell Max form that Raditz's yellow-eyed state was related to Ozuru, and this required a tail, which was something Goku didn't have. That's why neither Cell nor the Z fighters expected Raditz to transform. Neither of the fusion partners could do each other's transformation. So how was the fusion supposed to transform into anything? But the exaggerated ki which was shaking the very planet was telling them clearly. Not only could Raditz go Super Saiyan, his Super Saiyan was in a league of its own. With the skies shaking and the ground crumbling, Raditz's hair began to flash yellow. His already tall body started bulking up and his eyes went completely white. What is that? That's not Super Saiyan at all." Nappa stuttered, because this form of Raditz might look like a Super Saiyan, but there were some very big differences. The power boost for one was absurdly high. It went way beyond 50 and was almost reaching a 500 times boost. Raditz's eyes had become completely white, having rolled to the back of his head. And lastly, his body. His body bulk had increased tremendously. He was a mountain of muscle, but something told the Z fighters he wasn't limited by speed nor stamina. Could this be the legendary Super Saiyan? Gohan asked tentatively. He knew Raditz was the legendary Super Saiyan, but nobody had seen his version of the transformation yet. So maybe his dad's fusion with his uncle also resulted in a legendary Super Saiyan. After all, one of the participants was a real legendary Saiyan. This question of Gohan also made every Z fighter's mind click into place all at once. Yes, this could be it. Yes, this is definitely the legendary Super Saiyan. Nappa exclaimed with a large smile on his face. He saw it at last, the Super Saiyan of the legend. No wonder that being was so revered. When their transformations were struggling around a 50 times, Raditz had directly gone up to a 500 times. This exaggerated transformation of his has to be the one in the legend, or it simply wouldn't make sense. No. This couldn't be happening. Cell's loud booming voice brought everyone's attention back to him, and then they understand how scary this transformation was to the person facing it. Raditz, completely ignoring everything, had stopped yelling by now, and seems to have completed his transformation to his satisfaction. His golden hair had a tint of green aura around it. His featureless white eyes were staring right at Cell. He had made no sound, but Cell's own heartbeat was making the sounds for him. Cell was terrified. He was shaking in his boots. The level of power he was feeling coming from Raditz was something which made him freeze in place. No, spare me. Please, spare me. Cell turned around and ran. His fear had made him irrational. He didn't care about the tournament anymore. He didn't care about killing Goku. All he wanted to do was get out of here, someplace away from this monstrosity. Raditz didn't move hearing Cell's pleas of mercy, but the veins bulging on top of Raditz's forehead had shown he wasn't in the mood to let Cell go and continue his killing. Whoosh! Flying into the air in a semi-normal speed, Raditz watched Cell Max make a run for it. He was flying into the skies, trying to escape the planet altogether. Cell's speed was fast, and soon he was out of their eyes, but Raditz's featureless eyes seemed to see him very clearly. Omega Blaster! These two words were the only thing that came out of Raditz's mouth before the entire world changed colors. It started from the energy being collected in Raditz's palms, then the world soon changed to a gray, which flipped to a green, then a yellow, and soon a white. The entire environment was acting as if another dimension was taking over the world, but the Z fighters could sense, so they knew this was just the after effects of Raditz's ki being gathered. When the weaker Z fighters really began to think the world would end like this, Raditz took his hands back and got into a throwing pose. Narrowing his eyes, Raditz's veins bulged, putting a tremendous amount of force into his hands. Zoom! He let the attack go. The Omega Blaster zoomed towards Cell, who had run to other space and crossed the large distance in almost a few seconds, leaving only an instant for Cell to turn and watch the attack coming towards him from the blue planet. Why? I am the perfect being dash. An explosion of gigantic proportions detonated in the void of space. The side of the Earth facing the explosion was bombarded with so much light that all anyone could see for a while was white, and all anyone could hear was a strong ringing sound from the atmosphere itself shaking. It was as if everyone on Earth had taken Krillin's solar flare attack to the face. But thankfully, this state of Earth didn't last long, and after the Z fighters could finally see, they found that Raditz, Dad, Uncle Raditz, had split back into Raditz and Goku. Ha. I am here, son. Goku replied back tiredly, and sat down onto the ground without any image. The last attack they made had sucked so much energy out of them that the fusion broke down almost immediately, so Goku was very tired right now. And Raditz on the side wasn't any better. He too collapsed onto the ground. But he didn't even bother to sit. He straight up lied down onto the ground. We made it. Cell is dead. Thank God. We came too close to messing up big time. With these thoughts, Raditz laid there as the Z fighters began to talk and the camera crew began to hype. He didn't care about any of that. All he wanted to do was relax for a while. He had done enough for today. He deserves some rest. Chapter 128, Baby Boom. A year passed after the defeat of Cell, and this entire year was very much packed full of events. The whole world had seen the Cell games. Capsule Corporation satellites had also released pictures of Cell getting disintegrated in space. Coupled with deliberate propaganda from King Furry, the Earthlings knew how big of a crisis this was. Dr. Gero was hung on a pillar of shame and Raditz was sung as the hero. This year Satan dressed as Raditz made far too many tours around the world, pushing Raditz's fame to an all-time high. Although Raditz roaming around with Satan's family in tow had brought up some questions, Bulma had angrily censored them all. Bulma has also been very busy as a result this year, not only busy managing Satan's mess, but also managing Raditz Jr., her son and the current Scion Prince. Raditz, can you look at Junior for a while? I can't come over right now. Bulma yelled from her lab, and Raditz, who was meditating, opened his green eyes hearing that. His gaze turned towards the crib where a smaller version of him was trying to climb over using his tail and making a mess of his surroundings. Giving a slight smile, Raditz breathed out and his eyes turned back to black. So did his blonde hair. Walking towards his son, Raditz Jr., named just like how Saiyan royalty were supposed to be named, Raditz picked up the little thing. Duh. But Raditz Jr. was fearless and began to laugh happily, prompting Raditz to sit him on top of his shoulder and walk towards the garden. You little guy, Dad is trying to control his Super Saiyan. Did you have to make a mess right now? Raditz Jr. of course didn't understand a word and only laughed happily because he was sitting on top of his dad's shoulder. Shaking his head, Raditz patted the long mane of his son. The hair was exactly his copy and so was everything else. You laugh, but this is important, you know. Bu will come out in a few years. I can't be a raging monster before him. Your dad's the legendary Super Saiyan. Although this gives him invincible power, his Super Saiyan is just as hard to control. So cut me some slack and let me practice. Okay, buddy? At least be quiet until I can combine Ikari with my Super Saiyan. The resulting baby talk only had Raditz sigh. He knew he wasn't going to get the time to train with all his heart right now. Amongst all his kids, Raditz Jr. was the toughest to handle. It wasn't just his playful personality, it was his extremely high power level. The baby was born with a power level of 10,000. You know, little guy, I almost thought you were also a legendary Super Saiyan, but your mom says you were just really strong because you inherited my body. Talk about taking a shortcut to success. None of your siblings have what you have, they weren't as lucky. Of course, Raditz Jr. also wasn't as lucky as he could have been. After all, he was also conceived before Raditz had transformed into the legendary Super Saiyan. It was just that the android arc span was much shorter compared to the original, and Raditz Jr. also took an unusual amount of time to be born, or his birth would have been sooner and not after Cell's defeat. Bulma still wasn't sure why Raditz Jr. took a longer amount of time to be born, but the tests showed he was healthy, so the conclusion they derived was that his 10,000 power level was too much for Bulma to handle, resulting in a longer development time. While Raditz was thinking all this, he had arrived and was now sitting in the garden, and right after he sat down, Ranfan came running over with sparkles in her eyes. King, are you out for a walk? Raditz turned towards Ranfan and smiled. She also had a bald baby girl in her arms. The tail hanging behind her signified her status as a Saiyan. Oh, Ranfan, I'm taking the prince out for a walk. How are you? How is little Fascia doing? Poking the baby girl in her cheeks, Raditz said softly. You truly take over your father. Turning his eyes towards that shining bald head, he stifled his laughter and said, in more than one way. But Ranfan caught onto that and twitched her eyes, but there wasn't much she could do. This was the king of the world, and he was right as well. Fascia was born bald like most babies, but she should have grown hair by now. Although Nappa consoled her that he had a head full of lush hair in his youth, this wasn't enough to elevate her worries. She was a beautiful woman with amazing hair. She would rather have her girl not inherit her father in that regard. Right. Haha. Ranfan laughed dryly and sat herself beside Raditz on the bench. She wasn't a Saiyan, she was an Earthling. So even when Nappa told her it's not needed to be on good terms with his boss, or that it's not necessary to curry favor from him, she didn't listen. All she knew was that being associated with Raditz and being his right-hand man gave Nappa the fat paycheck which her house ran on. So she took it upon herself to keep friendly relations with his boss, even if her husband was too simple to understand this fact. There she goes again. She should seriously listen to Nappa. It's not like I am gonna ditch him for another Saiyan. There aren't any left. Raditz internally thought, while just nodding along with whatever Ranfan was talking about. His mind was pretty relaxed right now. Bu was at least 6 years away. He had unlocked his Super Saiyan, completing the Super Saiyan part of his legendary title. Fusing into Raditz gave him a glimpse of how Goku went Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2, which helped Raditz finally unlock the form on his own. Although he also went berserk the first time he had used it, it required Goku, Gohan, Nappa, Vegeta, Krillin, and Piccolo to fight him desperately for him to regain control. They almost had to be wished back again with how much Raditz had rampaged. Oh hey, is that you, Mr. Goku? Ranfan's sudden call alerted Raditz and brought him out of his contemplation. Turning towards the direction Goku's ki was coming from, Raditz saw his brother. But just when he was about to greet him, he noticed a baby in his arms. But the weirdest part was the baby had a halo on his head. Kakarot, how did you get that baby killed? Asked a confused Raditz, hearing which Goku laughed and rubbed the back of his head. He isn't dead. He is Goten. Well, he is somewhat dead, but he is also alive. Goku said while raising a finger. Seeing this further confused Raditz and Ranfan. So Goku explained a little more. I kind of forgot to wish Chi-Chi back with everything going on. So when we wished everyone killed by Cell back, I remembered and went to meet her using instant transmission. She was in hell for making a ruckus in King Yema's office, but honestly hell wasn't all that bad. There were many Gohans playing while a lot of books lay around everywhere. Scratching his head, Goku said in a confused voice. But that seems to really make Chi-Chi angry. She was screaming her lungs out and threatening them with something before I arrived. Giving a large smile, Goku then replied, "Just today King Yema told me Goten was born. He really gave me an earful for this. Supposedly, this is the first time a baby is born from living human and someone from the other world." Raditz blinked many times and processed this entire thing. Meanwhile, Ranfan was focused on another thing. "Su, you tangled with your wife's soul? Then is that child a human or a ghost?" Goku laughed as if he didn't even understand the meaning of tangled and explained. "Goten is both alive and dead. You see, he has this halo because of Otherworld, but he can stay in the living word for as long as he wants." Raditz again blinked. So what his brother meant was that Goten can go into the Otherworld and skip into the living word as he wished. That was sick. Goku's children are in a league of their own right from birth, it seems. Chapter 129, 6 years. With Raditz fulfilling his role as a dad and Goku bringing a new brother to Gohan, things were going swimmingly for the Z fighters. There was peace, no news of new threats, and this was a fantastic time to relax after the constant high-pressure period that had begun since Raditz arrived. This sense of peace had made some of the Z fighters lazy. Yamcha had stopped training altogether after a year of zero progress. Although Tien and Kaiatsu trained, they didn't make any progress either. Still, they didn't stop trying even then, constantly looking for a new way out, which they could be seen doing in their dojo. The yells of students rang in the practice grounds. Tien was sitting and meditating on one of the 3 main seats situated up above. The students themselves were currently being trained by the 2 remaining teachers, Kairatsu and Yamcha. Yamcha, unlike the original, had at least somewhat stuck around after getting his confidence back. Because of the potential unlock, he knew he wasn't completely hopeless. Although he had stopped training after an entire year of efforts with no results, his idea was to take a break and see if he gained some inspiration from the students down below. That was why he had decided to stick with Tien when he was offered the position of sensei. "Yamcha-sensei, I can feel it." A bald-headed man in his 20s exclaimed with surprise and giddiness. Yamcha turned to look towards the man who had called out to him. "Oh, Scale, it's you. Did you feel your ki so soon? Man, talk about talented. No wonder Raditz recommended you." Yamcha praised the man. This was a man who had come holding Raditz's recommendation letter. He was one of the first people to join their newly built dojo. In fact, if it wasn't for Raditz advertising this place for them, it would have been impossible for so many students to arrive in such a short time. So although Yamcha gave special attention to Scale because of this, he didn't expect the guy to actually achieve something so quickly. Patting the sweating man on his shoulder, Yamcha grinned. "You surprised me. I thought for sure you would have taken a lot longer, with you having no prior martial arts experience and all." Scale wasn't one to get shy over compliments. In fact, he was quite the opposite. He was standing with his head held high and his smirk on for all to see. After hearing this much praise from Yamcha, Scale decided to hide the fact that he was fed nature ki by Raditz, and this was what made him capable of getting a sense of his own ki so quickly. He was already used to manipulating ki before he had even found it. "So now that I have completed the first step, what next, Yamcha-sensei?" asked Scale, making sure the surrounding practicing men could hear his voice loud and clear. This was his way of asserting his dominance. In the end, he was a member of society's dark side. His first instinct when coming to a new place was checking the danger levels, and after that was done, asserting his dominance over what he could. This he had done here as well, and gathered a large set of followers very quickly. He was also quite sure, after this recent announcement, he would climb even higher on the totem pole. "Ha ha ha." Yamcha laughed and gestured Scale to come along with him to another place, which Scale did with his head raised high. But what Scale didn't know was that Yamcha wasn't clueless to all this. After all, he wasn't a martial artist at his core either. He was a bandit. Desert bandit wasn't a job one can take up by being a naive person. So Yamcha was very much aware of everything, but he let it go. The only people who joined Scale ignoring practice were the ones who had no intention of progressing to being with. This just made his job easier in recognizing the good ones. And that makes best of both worlds. I hope one of these remaining people can give me the inspiration I need. Yamcha thought while he showed Scale around his new training room. After that was done, Yamcha left pretty quickly. He still had people to observe and train. Scale saw Yamcha leave, then took in the new training room he was given and breathed a sigh. Taking out a wallet out of his pocket, he looked at the picture of his wife Ruli and his son Sharpener. "I can do this. If I get sufficiently strong, I will have a stable job in Mr. Raditz's company. Then we can live the life of our dreams." This was what motivated Scale to do what he always did. His family. And while Scale worked on his goals, in another place Videl was working on her own. Kicking the sandbag, Videl huffed and puffed. She was tired but still willing to train some more. Looking at Videl's serious face, one wouldn't be able to guess she was a young girl, but this was what dying once had done to her. She had grown up in a day, and after being brought back by Raditz, she had took it upon herself to ask for training. Although Raditz couldn't afford the time to train her personally, he did give her scientific ways to train that Bulma had developed in her spare time. "Goten, come here." Contrary to his future wife, Gohan's face was not at all serious and was in fact, very much the opposite. He was playing as happily as he could with his brother. He was so happy he has gotten a brother that he even gave up his study time to play with Goten. So although he was getting a bit behind on study schedule, Gohan was doing just fine otherwise, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And according to Ox King, after what he had gone through, he deserved some time to himself. Mirroring Gohan in his mood, Krillin was also having a great time. He was currently out with his wife Tights and was having a spectacular time. How is that, honey? It's nice, but it's too expensive, Krillin. How about this? The newlywed were shopping around and choosing things for their new home. Their wedding was held a week ago, and everyone had come to attend. This was a great day in Krillin's life, and it would only get better with Earth being peaceful. While the newlywed duo were running around the mall, 18 was sitting at a restaurant right next to them and eating an ice cream. She was one of the only Z fighter who had nothing to do. She was just walking around randomly, helping people whenever she can, and in her own way trying to right whatever wrongdoing she had committed in the future. She was overall doing okay. Just this newly developed habit of eating sweet things was something she wanted to get in control. Who knows if her android body was immune to obesity? This wasn't something she wanted to risk at all. Ayakak! A loud shout rang while 18 was eating her ice cream, but she didn't hear it, or it was correct to say nobody on Earth heard this. As this was from Vegeta, who was training on another planet and trying to push past Super Saiyan correctly, he was the only Z fighter who didn't stop a single day and trained all the time. His wounded pride pushed him to keep progressing even if there was no new threat, and he could feel it in his bones. He was close to Super Saiyan 2. Just like that, the Z fighters spent their days in their own different ways, and soon days turned to months, and months to years. 6 years went by in a flash and winds of fate had started blowing once more. Somewhere in the vast universe, the missing Demon King Dabura had set a new destination for his master. The destination? A little-known planet in the North Quadrant called Earth. Chapter 130. The Terrifying Bu. In the yard of Capsule Corporation, two strong fighters were clashing at blinding speeds. Their bodies couldn't be seen by the naked eye, and all one could perceive them by was their tremendous ki. Bang! By pure accident, one of the warriors slipped up, but in this high-speed spar, this tiny bit of slip-up resulted in him losing control of the entire battle and getting blasted down to the ground. Boom! Damn it! The man who was blasted down cried out in pain. His blonde hair and Goku-like face was morphed into a painful look, while his white pants and orange-black half-jacket was stained with dust. Thump! Not minding the state his opponent was in, the warrior who had just defeated the man landed on the ground with a thump. His long, spiky mane was yellow in color just like the man below, but his white armor wasn't stained with any dirt whatsoever. One more crucial difference between the man below and the man standing above him was the fact that the winner warrior had no pupils. A pair of pure white eyes were looking down at the fallen warrior with a smile. "You lost, Gogeta," said the winner, and Gogeta angrily punched the ground upon hearing that. "Damn it, Raditz, this is the third time," Gogeta remarked in a pissed-off voice, but before he could try once more against his opponent, his body abruptly shone a blinding light. Whoosh! And split into two separate entities, Goku and Vegeta. Ow, that stings. Damn. But Goku and Vegeta didn't seem surprised by this phenomenon and were still immersed in their defeat just now. Noticing that their fusion time was over, Raditz also powered down and returned to his base form. Sitting down on the ground with the two fighters, Raditz laughed happily. "Thanks for the fight, Kakarot, Vegeta." Hearing Raditz's words, Vegeta only snorted softly and looked away while Goku grinned broadly. "Don't mention it, I got a lot of training done too, but Raditz, have you managed to combine your Ikari and Super Saiyan? You have beaten our fusion 3 times in a row." Goku's doubts weren't Goku's alone, they were Vegeta's too, and after seeing Raditz smiling with pride, those doubts were answered once and for all. Tisich. Vegeta clicked his tongue at the implications. He didn't appreciate fusion just like most Saiyans, but he had endured it for 2 main reasons. One was to get experience in Super Saiyan 2 from Goku. The second was to experience Raditz's full power for himself. This last part was something he would rather have experienced by himself, but he was so far behind Raditz that it wasn't even a choice. "Kakarot, I am not fusing with you anymore. I will defeat this guy by myself," Vegeta announced while getting up, but his tone didn't have as much spite as it used to have 7 years ago. Unlike the original where only Goku was stronger than him, here he was the weakest adult Saiyan alive. Goku, Gohan, Nappa, and Raditz, every single one of these warriors were either stronger than or equal to him. This had Vegeta accept his position on the power scale much faster. So the person who was standing before Raditz wasn't a potential Majin Vegeta anymore, but a Vegeta after his fight against Bu, a Vegeta who had already changed for the better. "The years surely left a mark on you, didn't they, Vegeta?" Raditz thought while watching Goku and Vegeta bicker amongst each other. The 7 long years of peace, having a kid, a caring wife, and the gradually multiplying Saiyan race had mellowed down Vegeta by a lot. So much so that Raditz had fully accepted the man as a partner he could trust. "All right, Cut it out, you two. Don't waste your energy in senseless fighting for now. Goku and Vegeta, who were pulling each other's ears and nose, looked at Raditz simultaneously and asked, "Why?" Raditz ignored the synchronized way of speaking, as well as the further snorts of Vegeta, and explained why he was saying what he was saying. "Remember the World Martial Arts Tournament we attended a week ago? I had a feeling that someone was watching us back then." Raditz spoke while remembering the tournament he had attended, figuring he would meet the Spopovich duo soon. But the whole tournament ended and a week went by just like that. Yet no Babidi or Dabura had visited them. Raditz couldn't even sense anything out of the ordinary on Earth. It might be magic at play, but knowing the cause didn't solve his problems in this case. The only thing he had going for him now was his ability to feel that someone was looking at him from somewhere. And he could do this only in his legendary Super Saiyan state. "Listen, I have feeling that someone is observing our every move. I do not know what intentions they hold yet. Whatever they may be, it's being hidden from us. And I have a bad feeling about this." Raditz had no way of possibly knowing that Majin Buu exists, so this was how Raditz had spun the tale. But a supposed hunch from the legendary Super Saiyan was more than enough to alert both Goku and Vegeta. "A sneaky guy? Humph, let him come. I'll take care of him." Vegeta folded his hands and said with irritation. He was pretty pissed off at both himself for not realizing this and at the guy who was peeking at them. Goku didn't speak at all but had a thoughtful look to him. Raditz himself didn't say anything more about this issue. It's not that he didn't try finding the duo. He even asked the dragon a few days ago, but the dragon said locating them was beyond his power. This wasn't something that surprised Raditz. The dragon can't affect people stronger than its creator without their consent. And no way would Dabura and Babidi consent to being found. "I seriously hope a high enough firepower can hold Buu down. I don't have much I can use against him unless he goes Kid Buu." Raditz was clueless on what he could do against Buu. Nothing in his arsenal could defeat a Buu who didn't purposely split into Kid Buu. Completely evaporating Buu? Sorry, he can come back from pure smoke. Blasting him to pieces? Nope. He reforms and joins back together like putty. Sealing him somehow? He even broke the dimensional barrier of time chamber with a scream. Good luck trying to seal him without magic. Not only that, he can turn anyone into chocolate, which only he can turn them back from. He is immortal and does not age. He can breathe in space without any problems. He can tire out his enemies then absorb them, making them a part of his own strength. You can't surprise him twice because he can learn any techniques he sees. You can't keep tearing his body apart because he can control torn body parts. He can change his appearance into anything he wants. He can grow extra limbs for the heck of it. He can just mess with someone for an eternity if he feels like it. And you can't even pretend Buu isn't your problem because he will kill anything he doesn't like. Damn, how I do defeat a monster like this. I hope to God he somehow splits into his pure evil version. Only then will Spirit Ball's evil erasing properties work. Shit, even with all this power I am not confident in doing this without Hakai. And I have no idea if Hakai can even kill this dude. It probably can, but Beerus was confident Hakai wouldn't work on Immortal Zamasu. Considering the kind of monster Buu is, his immortality might be working in the same way. After all, his inherent immortality feels even stronger than Zamasu's, and Zamasu was granted his by the Super Dragonballs. Why does a creature this absurd even exist? Raditz tried not to rub the bridge of his nose in frustration. He had trained long and hard and had become extremely strong enough to be on equal footing with Super Vegeto. Putting this into perspective, Base Vegeto was stronger than Gohan Buu. And Gohan Buu was the combination of Good Buu plus Evil Buu plus Piccolo Buu plus Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks Buu plus Ultimate Gohan Buu, all wrapped up in one package. And this was just Base Vegeto's strength. Raditz was stronger than his Super Saiyan form. The fact that even then defeating Buu seems impossible speaks volumes on how lucky they had gotten in the original. Chapter 131, Supreme Kai. The fact that they were being monitored was something that had stuck with Goku and Vegeta, despite another week passing by without any trouble. This would have been good news and they would have liked their peace to continue, but the sudden call from Raditz broke any and all such fantasies. "They are both Kais?" asked Yamcha with a curious look on his face. There were two people sitting on Raditz's couch. One was a tall and serious-looking fellow, and one was short but mysterious-looking one. "Yes, sorry for calling you warriors on such a short notice, but there is a threat plaguing our universe, and I need your help to defeat it." The short Kai spoke politely yet resolutely. He took a look at all of the Z fighters who had gathered for him, and gave each one of them a sincere smile. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am the Supreme Kai of this universe. My name is Shin. The one besides me is my partner, Kibito." The Z fighters heard the introduction and had many questions arise. The most prominent of them was what threat could this possibly be, which required the Supreme Kai to ask for their help in person. And Goku, being the ever-straightforward fellow, asked the doubts which arose in everyone's mind. "So what do you need our help with?" Shin became serious all of a sudden, and so did Kibito. Not answering Goku directly, Shin spoke to Raditz. "I have come here for Raditz. I have been observing him for a while now, and if anyone can defeat Majin Buu, it's him." Shin continued, trying his best to show a sorry smile after Raditz frowned. He knew Raditz was upset at getting monitored, but he didn't have much of a choice. Standing up on the spot, Shin bowed to Raditz and made an apology. Sorry, but it had to be done. The universe itself is at stake. I couldn't take a risk. Raditz huffed and hid away his annoyance. He had an inkling of an idea that it could be Shin, but he had figured it was probably Babidi. Apparently not. Fine, but do not do it a second time, Supreme Kai-sama. Please come to me directly if you need my assistance. Kibito frowned at Raditz's rudeness, but didn't speak up, because frankly, he was scared out of his mind. He was there when Supreme Kai had observed Raditz, and oh my god, why does a mortal have that much power? Raditz's spars had scared him so much he even let go of his god must not be sullied attitude. He would rather pretend he was deaf than clash against Raditz in any shape or form. Shin himself was actually on the same boat as Kibito, but he was more of a good person than Kibito was, so his fear was only momentary. What took over his fear was his sense of duty, and thus he made a hasty attempt to explain his part. I assure you it wouldn't happen again. I wouldn't have arrived all of a sudden if I had a choice in the matter either. Nor would I have called for the best warriors on your planet so abruptly. Taking a deep breath, Shin told them the remainder of the news. Majin Buu is about to be unleashed once more. The evil wizard Babidi is on the move, and is very close to his goal. This was explained by Shin in his most sincere voice, but as soon as he was done, Vegeta scoffed. What of it? Are they so scary even a Supreme Kai such as you would be afraid? Kibito almost burst out, but seeing that this was one of the fusion warriors, he shut his mouth just as quick. The hell was he willing to mess with someone comparable to Raditz in power, be it with or without fusion? My apologies, you might not know about Majin Buu. Coughing in his hands, Shin gestured with his hands and began to tell the tale of Majin Buu. Majin Buu is a creature that has been around since the conception of the universe. He wasn't evil at first, but as he kept on visiting planets and kept on absorbing more and more people, he started to slowly turn evil. Many years ago, a magician named Bibidi learnt to control Buu and used the creature's immense abilities for himself. Remembering the tragic battle where Majin Buu had attacked the scared land of Kais and left him as the sole survivor, Shin involuntarily gripped his fist. Knowing how much destruction he would cause, Grand Supreme Kai gave away his life and was absorbed by Majin Buu. This pacified Majin Buu's evil tendencies almost completely, and Bibidi was soon gone after that as well. Looking at Raditz, Shin said gravely, but his descendant Babidi is trying to make the mistake of releasing Buu once more. He doesn't know what kind of monster Buu is. I alone am no match for Buu. That is why I have come seeking your help. The only one who can defeat Majin Buu is Raditz. Despite being a mortal, his power is astonishing. Yamcha laid back on the sofa after hearing Supreme Kai's words and asked curiously, then why did you call us too? We aren't really needed if Raditz can complete the job by himself. The matter-of-fact way Yamcha said it was approved by the Z-Fighters as well, although no one was willing to say it out loud. But Supreme Kai had an answer to Yamcha's question. Although only Raditz has enough strength to overpower Buu, he isn't that easy to defeat. I want to invite Raditz to the scared land of Kais dash. Supreme Kai-sama. You must not. Kibito exclaimed. He couldn't help it. That was the land of Kais. How could a mortal set foot in there? But Shin glared at Kibito to shut him up and continued after giving a sorry smile. In the land of Kais, there exists a sword known as Z-Sword. Only with that weapon can Raditz defeat Buu. As for everyone else, please, try to stop Babidi from reviving Buu. If we can stop him from unleashing him in the first place, that would be for the best. Because even if Raditz managed to pull out the Z-Sword, this might not be enough to defeat Majin Buu. Our best bet would be to stop the threat before it can fully arise. The human Z-Fighters understood the sentiment expressed by the Supreme Kai, and so did Piccolo, but it was the Saiyans who weren't fond of this approach. Humph, how scared are you to suggest such a cowardly method? Vegeta scoffed at the duo, something which enraged Kibito and embarrassed Shin. Nappa also gave them a look which obviously said he was looking down on them. But it was Goku who had neither agreeing nor disagreeing looks. He was concentrated on another thing. Is this guy Babidi strong? Asked Goku. Shin was taken aback by the question, but answered truthfully. He is a Magican. Most of his abilities come from his minions. I am sure someone like you can take down Babidi easily. It is his underlings you have to worry about. The scariest of them all is Dabura, the king of the demon realm. Goku's eyes had a glint appear in them as soon as he heard that, and he promised pretty much immediately. All right, I am up. I can't wait to fight this Dabura guy. Supreme Kai was confused at the place Goku's attention was at, so he reiterated. Please, you must be as quick as you can. Do not let Babidi succeed. Nappa basically cut him off and waved his hand at Shin. We get it. We'll take care of it. Stop repeating yourself. You sound like a coward right now. Where's your pride as a Kai? Shin looked ashamed, but he gritted his teeth. No matter. He might come off as a coward, but he had seen Majin Buu and they haven't. If being a coward is what it takes to save the universe, he wouldn't back down, so he was ready to receive all kinds of dissatisfaction. Give him a break, you lot. Super Saiyan is trying his best here. There aren't many who can do a better job in his place. But when Raditz spoke out for him, Shin was taken aback and looked at him with wide eyes. He didn't expect Raditz to respect his words even if they were one-sided. Raditz, not minding Supreme Kai's surprise, continued to support him. For his sake, that is, because he sure as hell didn't want Majin Buu breaking his confinement anytime soon. Kakarot, Gohan, Nappa, and you too, Vegeta, don't take a chance. If this Buu fellow is as old as the universe and still isn't killed, he has to be a tough guy. Let's not take a risk we don't need to take. If need be, we will wish upon Shenron to revive Buu at a later time. Supreme Kai almost jumped out of his skin and said hastily, "You must not." Raditz turned to him and said, "With all due respect, Ko-sama, we are Saiyans. Running with our tails tucked in isn't our style. And relax, we won't do anything until we are sure that Buu can't defeat us. We will even confirm with Shenron. Although it will take a year for the Dragon Balls to recharge, so relax, will ya? They will stop Babidi from unleashing Buu." Shin gripped his hands and became quiet, then slowly gave a forced smile. "I see. Well, it would be for the best if you can defeat him once and for all." Compromising with Raditz, Shin gave in, and Raditz relaxed as well. Because although he was saying that he will revive Buu, he 100% wouldn't under any circumstances. This was only to satisfy the Saiyan pride of his people, nothing else. He did not need Vegeta or Goku to revive Buu for a good fight. That would be disastrous for the universe. Chapter 132, Monster King. With their next course of action decided, the Z fighters were ready to set out for Babidi. Supreme Kai's assistant Kibito was given the responsibility of taking them to planet Wasabi, the new lair of Babidi and Dabura. Meanwhile, Supreme Kai had decided to go get the Z sword for Raditz. He could only rest easy with the Z sword in his champion's hand. "Everyone, the future of our universe is in your hands." Supreme Kai inspired the crowd and prepared to show them where Babidi's lair was. Holding his hands up, he used one of God's techniques, creation, to create a model of what he was seeing and then move it in real time. So soon a dimly lit cave appeared before everyone's eyes, and within the cave there stood two people and one giant egg. "That's Buu's egg. How did it get there?" thought Raditz. Buu was no longer on Earth. Something had changed due to him being here again. Well, it was to be expected. He was not shying away from showing his fame. Even an alien who just visited Earth would know Raditz within a minute. Those advertising funds weren't being used for nothing. "What are they doing?" asked Piccolo. The short, ugly one was laughing madly while his tall partner sat on the ground with a slump. He assumed they were Babidi and Dabura. But although Piccolo had asked him a question, Supreme Kai did not answer. His forehead was pouring sweat like never before, and so was his assistant Kibito's. This can't be. When did he collect so much energy? He didn't have nearly as much as this before. Kibito stuttered. They had kept tabs on Babidi, and they knew he had come to Earth not only to get Majin Buu's egg, but also to collect enough energy to revive him. So how in the world, with them running out of Earth like that, did they gain enough energy to fill their container? There weren't that many life planets near planet Wasabi for them to loot from. They were missing something. This didn't please the Supreme Kai at all. "Everyone, we must hurry. Babidi should never get the chance to use all that energy. Shit, he is trying to revive Buu now. Go, quickly, Kibito." Kibito gulped up, but somehow stopped his trembling and stared holes into the Z fighters. "Grab onto me quickly," he exclaimed angrily. The Z fighters too realized the gravity of the situation, so they went ahead and put their hands on Kibito's shoulders. Swish, and vanished using Kai. Meanwhile, a few minutes ago on planet Wasabi. "Ugh." Dabura cried out in pain but still held on, all for his master, Babidi. Yes, a little more, Dabura, just a little more." Babidi cackled while stabbing into Dabura with a lamp-like device. The device had a needle which kept turning ever so slowly, reaching the symbol which signified full as time passed. But Dabura, who had been stabbed, was definitely not having a good time. He had been getting sucked dry of energy ever since they left Earth. They had refrained from doing that before because he was the bodyguard of Babidi, and who in their right mind would weaken their own guard if they had a choice. But certain circumstances had forced Babidi to make a choice. Still, that didn't make it any better for Dabura, getting his energy sucked dry like that. "Master, if you take any more of my energy, I will not be able to protect you," Dabura pleaded. After getting the Majin mark from Babidi, he was loyal to the very core. All these years of servitude had left its mark on Dabura. So although Babidi had been using him as a disposable power bank since they returned from Earth, he wasn't mad. All his worries were there because he had grown weak and wouldn't be able to protect Babidi. "Master, let's take a break. I am getting too weak. If the Earthlings get to know about us, we might be in terrible danger." But Babidi out of nowhere trembled. His hands shook and he gulped his saliva in a fearful fashion. It's the Earth. They are staring at us." Babidi could feel it. His magic was telling him that there was someone on Earth who was watching him right now. Could it be that monster? No, it couldn't be. That monster without pupils. He wouldn't come for them, right? No, he shouldn't. I didn't do anything in his territory. I left Earth as soon as I sensed him. Does he? Does he know I took Boo's egg from his planet? That's it. That must be it. He is coming to claim it as his property. Damn it. I knew I should have given him offerings before taking the egg away. He is the king of that planet. Of course he will keep tabs everywhere. Babidi was scratching his wrinkly head in frustration, and hearing his self-talk, Dabura's eyes also shrunk. Does that monster King Raditz know about us? Master, then we must hurry and get out of here. Dabura tried hard to get up. He knew how dangerous that guy was. Their plan was to land on Earth and absorb the energy of the population there to revive Bu. But as soon as they landed on Earth, they saw Raditz posters and banners everywhere. Thinking this guy is worth taking energy from, being the king of this planet and a strong one to boot, they sneaked into his palace and then promptly shot themselves. Dabura still remembered the first time he saw Monster King Raditz turn into this Super Saiyan thing. Dabura had personally decided to call that white-eyed state of his Punisher, because punishment was exactly what he dealt onto his opponents in that form. We cannot run away anymore, idiot. They are about to arrive. Grr, I cannot hesitate anymore. Babidi shook Dabura out of his musings by delivering a sharp pain to his chest. Master? Dabura asked in a shocked fashion. What was Master Babidi doing? But Babidi had blood in his eyes, he said in a vicious voice. I can't hesitate anymore. As long as Bu is revived, I can contend against anyone, that monster included. Okay, maybe not him, but I can still run away. I got to hurry. And just like that, before Dabura's rapidly clearing eyes, Babidi decided to trade Dabura's life for Bu. When his life finally flashed before his eyes, Dabura understood he had been replaced with Bu. Someone he wasn't even sure can really protect Babidi. How pitiful. First Yakon, then him, Babidi had sacrificed his own men one after the other, all because he was terrified that Raditz would come for him after sensing the stolen egg. Guess he won't be able to see Bu fight against that monster king. Truly, a pity. Thud. Dabura's body fell to the ground, lifeless, and Babidi, smiling, picked up the lamp-like device, which showed full. I did it, dash. Swish. In the very next second, a whole bunch of people showed up in his cave, with Kibito being at the forefront, causing Babidi's eyes to pop. Earthlings. Please forgive me. Let me see your king. I will definitely give him a satisfactory answer. Babidi immediately knelt down and started begging, which had everyone present to be taken aback. Why was Babidi so deadly afraid of Raditz out of nowhere? What were they missing? Chapter 133, The Egg. Raditz and Babidi, both parties were unaware that the other one was afraid of themselves. Raditz didn't know the reason why Babidi fled Earth was him, nor did Babidi know what Bu's actual abilities were and how wary Raditz was of the creature. This gap in information created a big misunderstanding. Both parties thought that the other side was incredibly deadly. And this misunderstanding was what caused the following events to go down. I didn't want to take away Bu's egg without telling your king. I was just borrowing it. I swear. Watching Babidi grovel before them had the Z fighters go through a variety of emotions. The most intense of them was speechlessness. Is this the big bad threat Supreme Kai was so worried about? The guy was practically begging for forgiveness after the slightest hint of threat came his way. Pathetic. Is this your big bad wizard? This is what you collected us all for? Vegeta scowled and violently slapped Kibito out of his way. Boom. Ignoring Kibito, who had crashed to the side, Vegeta walked up to Babidi and looked down at him with disgust. Babidi looked up fearfully and internally relaxed after seeing it wasn't Raditz. Adjusting his emotions, he began again to plead. Please, let me see your king. I can definitely make it up to him. Vegeta twitched his lips and gave a smirk to Babidi. Pitiful, utterly pitiful. This is what Supreme Kai was afraid of. Don't make me laugh. Vegeta looked at Kibito and barked in anger. This was a complete waste of his time. And Kibito clenched his fist and looked down in shame. What was he supposed to say? This wasn't what he had in mind. Babidi didn't behave as such when he was clashing against them all these years. Humph. Vegeta snorted, watching Kibito look down in nothing but shame. All this while he was purposely giving his back to Babidi to see if he was going to attack. But even when all of them were talking, this guy didn't even have the guts to move from his place. He was kneeling in that position, motionless. This enraged Vegeta even more. This trash, you are a waste of my time, perish. Creating a ki blast, Vegeta aimed it at Babidi. He was prideful, but he did keep Raditz's words in mind. The order of killing Babidi and Dabura before they can revive Bu was taken seriously by him. So although he was clearly disappointed at the threat being nothing more than that, he faithfully carried out the order nonetheless. Tisage. clicking his tongue because Babidi even now didn't move from his place and only trembled. Vegeta just decided to end this. But before he could do that, Goku spoke out. Hey Kibito, he has given up fighting, can't we let him go? Goku didn't like taking life for no reason, especially life of someone who clearly wasn't even defending himself. So he put forward his opinion on the matter, but both Kibito and Vegeta were against it. Shut up Kakarot, he is going to just turn around and do it again when we leave. I am afraid I have to agree. Babidi is an evil wizard, there is no saving him. Goku scratched the back of his head in a distressed fashion. He was a bit troubled on what should be done. But then Gohan spoke up. Having spent the last 7 years in peace, his sense of battle has also waned considerably. So although he was stronger, he was much more peaceful compared to his Cell Saga self. But he has given up everyone, see? He isn't even defending himself anymore. Gohan, who was now bigger than his father in size, made his way towards Babidi after saying this. He wanted to prove that Babidi won't do anything, and even if he did, Gohan knew he was stronger than him. So he went ahead fearlessly. Hey mister, get up. Gohan bent down, trying to pick Babidi up from the ground. And then it happened. Swish. Gohan's eyes shrunk, so did every Z fighters, because Gohan's outstretched hand just went through Babidi like a mirage. Kibito, who had fallen down on the ground, instantly felt as if he was sitting on a hot pan. No, that's an illusion. Babidi isn't here. Piccolo immediately rushed towards Gohan and kicked the illusion in his face. Pop, causing it to pop out of existence. It was then that the Z fighters could see it, the ongoing reality behind the illusion. Haha, you are too late, Earthlings. I have done it. Bu is about to be born. There was the real Babidi, cackling like a madman while hiding behind the egg, holding the energy kettle in his hands as he pumped all of its contents into Bu's enclosure. The Z fighters were aghast. So they were talking to an illusion all this while? They were played like bouffons and they didn't even realize it. Babidi, you were hiding there this whole time? Goku asked in an amazed yet serious way. He thought for sure Babidi was asking for mercy before. This was the very first time he had fought against a legitimate sorcerer. He had no idea how dangerous a Magican's methods actually were. So he, together with his entire group, got tricked by Babidi in an almost childlike fashion. Fools. The moment I saw that Monster King hadn't come with you, I knew I had a chance. And you idiots made it so easy. I was on guard against this Kai the whole time, but thanks to you getting him out of the way, he couldn't even sense what was going on. Kibito was ashen. He really was about to sense if something was off to be sure, but he was slapped away by Vegeta before he could do anything about it. After that he was distracted because he was ashamed of his failure, and just like that he had wasted the precious opportunities Supreme Kai had brought for them. Ah, Bu, come out and kill everyone for me. Babidi loudly laughed while raising his hands, and an ominous key soon began emanating from the cocoon. Piccolo and Gohan, who were the closest to the egg, jumped back almost immediately. So did Vegeta and Kibito. The entire Z cast was on guard as the egg had begun to shake, as if something was about to come out of it. This energy. It's so dark. Piccolo was sweating bullets. Meanwhile, the human Z fighters had begun to feel the gap between them and the top class again. Only the Saiyans and Krillin were still ready to fight. The Saiyans being the warrior race they were, and Krillin being the absolute powerhouse he had grown to be. Wiggle. The egg began shaking more and more as time went by, and after some more time of fearful waiting, crack. The egg cracked open, reveling inside of it. It's empty, exclaimed the Z fighters and Babidi at the same time. But both of the group's emotions were different. The Z fighters were relieved and Babidi was panicked. He had already offended everyone here. If Bu isn't in this egg, he was a goner. Chapter 134, Bu. SHSSSSS. Very light sounds similar to that of air escaping a soda bottle came from the egg. But still, no sight of Majin Bu was found. Bu. It can't be. He should have been here. Babidi, who was the most affected by this accident, fell down on the ground. He was in despair. Ei. But feeling some dangerous signals coming from his side, he mechanically turned his head towards the problematic direction. Smirk. And saw Vegeta smiling and pointing his key ball at him once more. Deadly afraid of the attack, Babidi quickly raised his hand and created a yellow ball-like shield, trapping him inside the ball. Oh, a shield. Not gonna try to trick us now? Vegeta almost laughed watching his prey become cornered like that. Babidi had played him like a fool before. How dare he? Whoosh. Without another word, Vegeta took action, and the energy sphere rushed towards the screaming Babidi. Boom. Hitting him square in the face, breaking apart the magical barrier through sheer force. Rumble asterisk. But its influence wasn't limited to Babidi. The remaining energy hit the cave walls, shaking its 1,000-year-old foundations. The place is about to collapse. Hurry and get out of here. Tien exclaimed. His 3 eyes gave him a far better vision than most, so he found the rocks becoming looser much quicker than others. Vegeta, couldn't you have gone a little easier? See what you did. Goku complained while jumping out of the crumbling cave, and Vegeta just snorted in response. He had used too much power because he was pissed at getting played like a bouffon a while ago. While everyone was jumping away, Gohan went out of his way to carry Kibito. Thanks. Who gave a curt nod and a small smile. He had been slapped away by Vegeta abruptly and didn't have the time to defend himself, so he was hurt and not as quick on his feet. Of course, he could have gotten out by himself too, but it would not have been without a little trouble. So Gohan's sentiment was much appreciated by him, as opposed to, say, Vegeta, who Kibito was now going to watch daily and curse. From his planet, that is, he didn't have the guts to that on his face. Rumble. With everyone out of the cave, it collapsed into itself pretty quickly, burying Babiti's body and Boo's eggshell with it. They had one, but Piccolo was a previous Kami and a really old one at that. He had a good deal of decision-making ability, something he himself thought of as prudence. So he had an issue with the rough handling of the spot, and who better to ask about his worries than the assistant of the Supreme Kai? Is this all right? The blast destroyed the egg that was supposed to hold Majin Buu. If Buu isn't in it, he could have been released elsewhere. Isn't that egg the sole way he could be trapped? This last piece of information was something Piccolo had gotten while speaking with the Supreme Kai, so he was a bit hesitant at the loss of a sealing container. Kibito, who was also aware of this information, had a stagnant look on his face, but then spoke in an unsure way. It shouldn't be a problem. That egg is something Babidi came up with. Only Babidi and him can use their magic to hold Buu in it. We cannot use it even if we get it, so it should be fine. Kibito was getting unsure the more he spoke, but hell, he had to maintain his pride as a god somehow. What was he to say? Good question, human. I don't know. That would make him sound so silly. But I don't think Buu has been released before this. We were taking precautions since a long time ago. Buu should have been inside that shell. I am not sure what happened. Kibito added another point, and this point was something he was sure of. Kairatsu rubbed his chin and offered an explanation. Maybe he died inside. You said he wasn't released since a long time, right? So he could have starved. Kibito again was unsure if this could have happened. After all, from what he was told by Supreme Kai, Buu was an immortal monster. But could a mortal truly be immortal? Kibito didn't think so. Maybe. That's probably it. He accepted this theory. What else could have been the reason for Buu's absence? Nappa, who had been listening in all this while, smiled and quipped in a sarcastic tone. Some waste of time this has been. You were cautious of a guy who died ages ago, huh? Kibito could only gain an embarrassed look on his face. He had made a total fool of himself. And these guys didn't leave a single chance to remind himself of that. Let's hurry back. I will tell Supreme Kai-sama about this. Before that, I will drop you people back on Earth. Grab onto me. But Goku saw through Kibito's desire to escape embarrassment, so he smiled and eased the mood. I can bring everyone back. You can return to Supreme Kai first if it's urgent. Kibito was startled, but gratefully accepted Goku's help. Thank you, safe journey. Swish. And then Kibito vanished with Kai. Goku also didn't think there was any fun to had in this barren planet, so giving a signal to his buddies, he prepared for instant transmission. Yamcha shrugged his shoulders and grabbed onto Goku while complaining. Man, I thought I could have had fun after such a long time. Talk about a bummer. Giving a mutual feelings laugh to Yamcha, Goku had everyone grab onto him and teleported out without delay. He wanted to get back and train some more. He had to close the gap between Raditz and him somehow. Fun. What nobody found out until leaving was that a pink figure was sitting underneath the rubble. The fat pink figure's eyes were focused on the spot the Z fighters had been a moment ago. Remembering Yamcha and his words before leaving, Buu became stagnant for a second, then abruptly grinned. Fun. Buu likes having fun. Aya! Screaming out in an eerie fashion, Buu's surroundings lit up in a pink hue. Boom. And a large blast evaporated the rubble he was trapped in. Not looking the least bit winded or bothered by his actions, Buu turned his head towards a place in the sky. His eyes seemed to be looking at something invisible to the naked eye. Or was it in fact visible to Buu? Only Bai knew the answer. The only thing that can be confirmed if someone was to look was if one went straight towards that particular direction, they would encounter a planet named Earth. But nobody was there to confirm it, only Buu, who was a bit lost and confused. What now? He scratched his forehead while thinking out loud, then tilted his head and puffed out his chubby cheeks. Buu want fun, Buu declared, and then did something which would make Raditz clench his teeth in frustration. He put two of his fingers on his forehead and concentrated. Buu. He was concentrating, ever so hard, on a particular key, the key which had told him there was fun to had. The key, which belonged to Yamcha. Chapter 135, Z-Sword. After unknowingly unleashing the natural god of destruction from his enclosure, the Z fighters left planet Wasabi in a hurry, blissfully unaware of the terrible events about to go down. Meanwhile, in the land of Kais, Raditz was standing with the Supreme Kai, looking at a gorgeous sword inserted into a rock formation up above. That is the Z-Sword? Raditz whistled admiringly. This was a well-made sword for sure. That was to be expected as well. an angel had manufactured said sword. This wasn't any run-of-the-mill artifact but a true divine creation. Beautiful, isn't it? Supreme Kai, who was wholly unaware of how his ancestor was sealed in the sword, or how this was made by Beerus and Whis to punish the Kai, was proudly showing off the trinket. This is the Z-sword. Word has been passed down to us that the Z-sword can make its user the strongest being in existence. With this, we can surely defeat Bu once and for all. Twitching his lips, Raditz contemplated how much old Kai exaggerated his powers for such rumors to go around. The strongest in the universe? Whis, Beerus, Meruz, Broly, Monaka. Any one of them can clap whatever champion old Kai can create. Or maybe I am not giving him enough credit. Ultimate Gohan was the strongest mortal in known existence at that time. Except gods, only a monster like Broly could top Gohan, so it might not be all hot air on his part. Watching Raditz contemplate silently, Supreme Kai was a bit flustered. It wasn't that he didn't have the patience to let Raditz think. It was that they were running out of time. Raditz, can we get started? We still need to complete your sword training before Bu is revived. Yes, sorry for the delay. I got a bit distracted. Looking at the Z-sword with renewed vigor, Raditz decided to pull it out. He didn't have much to go on in terms of defeating Bu except beat him till he can't get up anymore, but that was a very risky thing to do. Nobody knows when Bu would create a new technique out of frustration to escape his plight. Bu just screamed and found a way to escape the time chamber without even knowing what he did. Anything he doesn't like, he can just make something up on the spot to counter that. Not to mention the titanic amounts of God Ki lying dormant within Bu. His energy reserves were so enormous that it overpowered a full-power Moro and gave Goku complete Ultra Instinct Susanoo, all in one go. So Raditz can only sit back and relax when Bu's evil half is dead for good, or he is sealed inside something. Something like the Z-sword? Cracking his knuckles, Raditz stared at the Z-sword in a focused way. Maybe he can get the method to make this sealing sword out of old Kai's mouth. It didn't hurt to try. Do I just pull it out? Or something else is needed first? Supreme Kai shook his head. As far as he knew, there was no other condition than the ability to pull out the sword. No, pulling out the sword is sufficient. That is the test. Nodding his head to show his understanding, Raditz jumped on top of the rock formation and gripped the sword without any more questions. Let's try base form first. Getting into the correct posture for pulling something out, Raditz's veins popped, and he started to put his back into the task. Hiya! Soon winds had begun to blow and the ground had started to shake from Raditz's efforts, but even though nature was churning from his power, the Z-sword did not move. Ayakak! Putting all of his base strength into the task, Raditz yelled with power. His muscles bulged from the sheer force he was putting into the task. Ugh! But again, the sword did not move even an inch from its position. And Supreme Kai was more than a little flustered at this point. Can't you pull it out? Try again. Maybe this time it has loosened a bit. But contrary to Supreme Kai's words, Raditz let the sword go and stood up straight. Asterisk crack. Cracking his back, he smiled while looking at the sword. Nah, I can't pull it out. Not as I am right now, at least. The first line had Supreme Kai almost get a heart attack, but the second line rekindled the hope inside of him. Not letting the Supreme Kai down, Raditz got into his power-up stance. Let's try with Super Saiyan this time. Whoosh. But he got interrupted by the sudden appearance of Kibito, who had teleported to the planet via Kai just now. Kibito, why are you here? What about Majin Bu? Supreme Kai asked in a surprised tone. But Kibito, who was about to complain about the Z-Fighter's antics, quickly swallowed his words after realizing Raditz was also here. Giving a smile which looked quite ugly on his serious face, Kibito told his superior what he had just seen. Supreme Kai-sama, we tried to stop Majin Buu's revival, but Babidi tricked us and managed to open the seal. Before Supreme Kai could start panicking again, Kibito spoke once more. Although it was for naught, the seal which held Bu was empty. Nobody was inside the shell. It is very likely that these long years had managed to turn Bu into dust. Bu is no more. He has perished. Shin was wide-eyed. He was so shocked that he froze in his place for a good minute. But nobody said anything about this, because Kibito was busy being happy about a job well done, and Raditz? He was busy gritting his teeth in anger. He knew Bu could be revived. It was possible for an accident to happen, but still, this was too soon. One job, I gave them one job. For what reason did they let a weakling like Babidi succeed like that? Damn it. Now what do? We lost our best chance against him. These fools, absolute fools. Raditz was frustrated, but he knew it in his heart that something must have gone wrong. His men were given explicit instructions to not let Babidi succeed in breaking the egg or suck energy out of them. But not only did Babidi get Super Saiyan 2 equivalent energy from somewhere, he also fed all that energy to Bu right before their eyes. This was such a massive blunder that Raditz was amazed at how his men managed to pull this off. But he wasn't one to jump to conclusions. He will find out why this happened after he meets them. But now, he had much more pressing matters to attend to. Oh man, I gotta seriously think of what to do now. Can't let Majin Buu run around. God knows where he will run off to and who he will absorb. This time around Buu was revived on a different planet, a planet which was barren. So Raditz wasn't sure where his next destination could be at. At least one thing the Z fighters did right. They left Buu in that planet unknowingly. He can rest assured that Buu won't attack Earth anytime soon. After all, they couldn't possibly mess up so badly as to give Buu directions to Earth and a reason to follow them on top of that. That would be absurd. 136. The New God. Huff. After a while, Raditz clenched fist loosened as he got his bearings back, and right around that time Supreme Kai also recovered from his shock. Buu is dead? Wiping away one stray tear from the corner of his eyes, Supreme Kai smiled at Kibito and praised him with all his heart. Wonderful news, Kibito. Truly wonderful. Finally, we won't have to worry about Buu running amok anymore. Supreme Kai also turned towards Raditz, and then gratefully bowed to him. Thank you very much for your support during this time, Raditz. Even knowing the possible danger, you didn't back down. Although Buu is now dead, but I would still like you to continue your stay here. You have helped us a lot, so please stay for as long as you like, and train to your heart's content. You have earned it. Ignoring Kibito's twitching eyes, Shin smiled and extended his formal invitation to Raditz, via raising his hand and pointing his palm towards him. Huh. Raditz was taken aback when he heard Shin's yell and saw his royal armor glow and disappear into a burst of energy as a new outfit was given to him. This is... Touching the yellow patera earrings on his ear and the full-sleeved Kai clothes he had been given, Raditz's eyes widened. Did he give me the Supreme Kai's attended position? So I'm the same as Trunks and Gohan were in the original. This was such a surprise that for a second Raditz even ignored the fact that Buu was actually revived and nobody knew. Because these clothes were extremely important when given by a Supreme Kai. When Shin did this, what he essentially did was to promote Raditz to the same level as Kibito and Zamasu. This wasn't just a name, it was a godly position. He was now a god of creation and training, just like Trunks and Gohan had unknowingly become in the original. But unlike those two, I know what godly powers come along with such a position. Kai, healing, force teleportation, creation, authority only below the Supreme Kai. And best of all, as an assistant my life isn't connected with Beerus. Both Shin and Beerus can die, and I will still keep my powers in life. This was how Trunks kept his ability to heal and his position as assistant Kai, even when the Kai-Ha-Kai duo of his timeline were dead. This is great. It is far beyond what I could have asked for. I have become a god. But my ki doesn't feel any different. Is it a time thing, or do I have to train with Shin before I unlock it? Raditz wondered. Shin was dead in Trunks' timeline and Gohan gave up his position almost immediately in favor of wearing his dad's clothes. So none of the two actually got to the part where Shin could train them. But now Raditz had a chance. As long as he protects Shin, he can get in touch with God Ki much sooner. Thank you. I am grateful to for this chance, Supreme Kai-sama. Bowing his head to Shin, Raditz gave him the respect he deserved. He wasn't so pedantic as to not do something so mundane because of his pride. Shin was not strong, just around a full-power Super Saiyan in strength, but his will was not weak. To make such a decision so easily required a strong will, and Raditz respected that. So if nothing else, just for this alone, he would try to save the god from the upcoming chaos. But their time was running out, so straightening from his bow, Raditz gazed at Kibito, much to the latter's uneasiness. Although all that was swept under the rug when Raditz asked his question. Kibito, you just said there was nothing inside the shell, correct? Did you check the place well? As far as I understand, Babidi, Buu, the trio can all use magic. Is it possible Babidi made Buu invisible? The sudden tremor that went through the Kai duo's spine didn't matter to Raditz, as he tried to find a way to tell them that Buu was there and definitely wasn't dead. I only ask because Babidi succeeded in opening the egg. From what I know, it only opens when Buu has absorbed enough energy. If he was dead, then what exactly was absorbing all that energy? Kibito and Shin almost jumped like a cat whose tail was stepped on. Gulping hard, Shin trembled but laughed in an attempt to ignore the fear creeping up on him. No way. Buu is probably dead. Kibito couldn't have been there and missed him, right? There is no way. I did check, but the cave collapsed and. Kibito wasn't able to say that he wanted to leave right away because Nappa and Vegeta were making fun of him, so he just kept stuttering, and this made Supreme Kai realize they might be in very deep shit. Kibito, check it out at once. Shin was tragically afraid for the universe now, but keeping his position in mind, he attempted to guide Kibito the best he could. Alright. Kibito didn't dilly-dally either, and quickly sat down while creating a glass ball, while both Supreme Kai and Raditz landed beside him to observe what was happening. With a light hum, the glass ball began to show a hazy image which quickly became clear. They are fine. At least they didn't meet Buu after I left. Kibito first checked on the Z fighters. He had left when they were back at Wasabi, so he figured if Buu was alive they would have fought by now. Supreme Kai-sama, it seems they are back at Earth. They must have left Wasabi soon after me. Shin nodded his head with visible relief. Looks like they haven't met Bu yet. But just this one check wasn't enough for them. They had made a mistake once. They really didn't want to make it again. I'll check the ruins that buried Babidi and the sealed egg, Kibito said while he ran his hands before the glass ball. The picture changed once more, but this time around all color drained from their faces. Because what should have been a collapsed cave according to Kibito was now a dirt plain, and what should have been devoid of life had a pink humanoid standing in the ruins. That is Majin Bu. Shin backed away in terror and fell on his butt. There he was, the terrifying Bu. What is he doing? Asked Kibito, who was also scared out of his wits. He made a massive blunder. That guy, he is trying to initiate instant transmission, Kakarot. How did he manage to teach Bu instant transmission before even meeting him? Raditz wasn't even in the mood to be speechless anymore. He was just plain confused. If Goku had met Bu, he wouldn't be back at Earth right now, yet Bu somehow knew instant transmission. How did this happen? It might be because they left Wasabi by using that technique. Kibito said his guess, which made Raditz look at him in a confused way. You didn't bring them back? Kibito was once more tongue-tied. He just wanted to get out of there and not face Vegeta. So when Goku gave him the chance to leave, he took it. I was told to come here and alert the Supreme Kai of the news. I am sorry. Kibito bowed to Shin. He understood he had made a blunder in his hurry. He should have been more forgiving and not as condescending on the fact that they were mortals. If he could have let go of his prejudices, he might not have made the same blunders. Alas, what is done. Supreme Kai shook his head. Now we must hurry, Kibito. Tell the Earthlings Bu is revived. Knowing Bu's nature, he might as well follow them to Earth. Wasabi is barren. It won't keep him entertained for long. Kibito quickly got up and after a bow, vanished using Kai. Now only Raditz and Shin remained. But this time around, the problem wasn't just a possibility anymore, it was a fact. It was time to pull out the Z-Sword. 137. Tea Party. When the universe was slowly crawling towards its destruction, unaware of it all, Bulma was sitting in her garden with Raditz Jr., her son. But Prince Raditz wasn't being as energetic as usual. No, he wasn't sad or anything. It was because he had his siblings and friends with him right now. While playing with Bardock, Trunks, and Goten, Raditz Jr. showed remarkable control over his emotions. This boy, always trying to show he is in control like his father, he learns the worst traits from Raditz. Bulma patted her forehead and complained to the girls sitting beside him. She was spending this day with her friends. Launch, Pai, Ranfan, Violet, Tights, and 18 were all at Capsule Corporation right now, as their children were begging to play at Bulma's. He has a lot to live up to, and you got off lucky. At least he isn't as uptight as my daughter. She inherited no grace from me at all. Ranfan complained while watching the second group of children mingling amongst each other. This group had her daughter Fasha, 18's daughter Lazuli, Tight's daughter Marin, and Pai's daughter Jine. Here the leader of the group was Fasha. She had inherited the characteristics of a Saiyan perfectly, although she was always trying to show her strength to Raditz Jr. Her mother knew the girl simply wanted to be recognized by him. She has a little something of me in there after all. This pleased her mother. She was a vain person by choice, because that was how the world worked according to her experience. So her daughter wanting to impress Raditz Jr., even if as a friend wanting to be recognized, is something she approved of. Although she would never say it out loud, these girls around her didn't understand her worldview at all. They were all naive. Ho ho ho. Ignoring the suddenly laughing Ranfan, the girls happily talked amongst each other. They knew Ranfan must be thinking something shifty again, so they simply ignored the lady. When the chatter was ongoing and many of the girls who didn't like each other stabbed the other side with their subtle words, Tights had a whole another motive going on. Hey, do you guys know what happened to everyone? Krillin hasn't come back yet. She questioned with worry on her face. Her husband had left with the group today morning and hasn't come back yet. This was why they had agreed to gather everyone today in the end. Their husbands were doing a group activity. Why shouldn't they? But they were taking a lot of time, so Tights was a bit worried. They should be fine. Raditz would have told me if something was up, 18 said casually while drinking lemonade. She had only drunk a little bit of the liquid when suddenly, swish, the whole group of guys appeared in the yard, causing 18 to choke out of surprise. Cough, 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 dash asterisk. Coughing while stabilized herself, she found that the group of girls who were just talking and laughing with her left her alone almost immediately. TCH. 18 clicked her tongue. She hated such parties. This wasn't her type of fun time. But well, everyone has to compromise with something or the other in life. This was her compromise. She then started to search for Raditz in the group, but curiously she couldn't find him. But before she could question them about him, someone else did. Where is Raditz? Asked Pai. Goku, who was asked the question, smiled and was about to answer before Launch said something in a surprised tone. Hey, why do I sense Raditz in the other world? His position just shifted. Her confusion was evident on her cute face. But this wasn't a time to think about her cute face. because not even the Z fighters knew how this could have happened. He just left with the Supreme Kai. What in world could have happened? What? Did he just get himself killed? Bulma screamed with fear and anger evident on her face. 18 once again choked on her lemonade and Pai Pai's tail slapped the ground in nervousness. But Launch, the ever-cheerful girl, wasn't the least bit worried. She was the manager of Otherworld. Life and death were already blurry at best for her. So what if he died? She could just meet him in heaven. No big deal. But she wasn't a heartless person. Bulma and the others couldn't do the same as her. So she tried to find out what just happened. Let me check. I don't know. Now that I think about it, his status is present in both Otherworld and the world of living. How odd. Laughing merrily as if she just found out about something cool, she kept looking, disregarding any frustration building up in the others. I think I got it. He's like me. I also have an imprint of Otherworld and Living World. This can happen if he is recognized as a manager of some sort by the world. Maybe he became a god. Bulma was looking at Launch with indignation and asked, so is he okay or not? And how did he become a god all of a sudden? What the hell? Swish. Raditz is all right, answered a gruff voice in Launch's stead. The voice came from Kibito, who had just arrived via Kai Kai. Oh, it's you. Then do you know what happened to Raditz? Pai Pai asked the tall red man. She had seen him before when the duo had come for their group. He called himself a Kai. Supreme Kai if she remembers it right. Aren't they supposed to be the highest gods or something? I do know what happened to him, and it is as you think, manager of the Otherworld. He has become a god, a Supreme Kai in training. This is the second highest rank of god in the universe, going by his strength and sense of honor. I would say it won't be long before he is promoted to the highest status of Supreme Kai. Launch simply clapped her hands with giddiness after the news, while Bulma frowned. Pai Pai looked confused and 18 was wondering how did he manage to become a god all of a sudden. She wouldn't mind giving it a try as well, Goddess 18. That had a nice ring to it. I don't care if he is a god or not. When is he coming back home? Bulma questioned angrily. He had promised to spend time with her tonight. They had plans. How can he just ditch her like that? Kibito was taken aback by the outright uncaring attitude of Raditz's wife. She was immortal. How did she have the guts to ignore gods was something Kibito didn't know. Neither did he want to know. Because he had come here not to talk about his new work buddy, but to warn them. I am not aware of when he can come home, but I would presume it isn't anytime soon. Before Bulma can burst her anger on him, Kibito switched his words. Raditz can't come because he is training for Majin Buu. Gasp. Yes, that's right, Majin Buu wasn't dead. He simply hadn't appeared before the cave collapsed. Taking in the abrupt, serious expressions of the Z gang, Kibito continued. And Son Goku, he seems to have copied your instant transmission. Buu is preparing to come to Earth, and he might be here any minute. I would suggest leaving for a better battlefield. If Buu arrives right now, none of us can survive. A ripple of shock spread throughout the group. So their plan failed after all? And Buu was about to arrive any minute now. This wasn't good. 138. Training Sword. Raditz was observing his planet from the Supreme Kai's realm and soon breathed a sigh of relief. After the Z fighters left for a more suitable battlefield, he felt much more relaxed. It seems Kibito is in time. Supreme Kai relaxed as well and wiped off his sweat. It would have been disastrous if Buu had caught them off guard. Shin never observed the universe in search for strength, so he didn't know any other people aside from the Z fighters who could help him defeat Buu. This coupled with his chosen champion being from said planet, he would rather Buu not slaughter his family before his very eyes. What can he say? It's a very demotivating thing after all. It's good they made it out of there. I won't have to worry about Capsule Corporation going up in flames. All of our new generation is there. Walking away from the crystal ball, Raditz flew towards the sword once more while mumbling lightly. It would be a shame if our younger generation needs to fight when we are still alive. If need arises, I will take Buu on all by myself. The Supreme Kai sitting down below had a smile appear on his face. It wasn't only Piccolo whose big ears had better hearing, it was the same for Supreme Kai. Hearing his champion ready to take on the threat one-on-one gave him confidence in his choice. Not many would go through the trouble, especially if one was already a Supreme Kai assistant. They technically shouldn't bother with threats like Buu. But Shin was too soft-hearted, and frankly too afraid of Buu, to simply let it go. Raditz, Buu seems to have latched onto one of your weaker warriors' ki. That's why he's taking a long time to locate him. But we never know. He could have remembered someone else's ki as well. If he gets bored, he might teleport to them first. Flying up the rock formation and landing beside Raditz, Shin encouraged his champion. We must make haste. Raditz seemed serious, although he didn't respond in agreement. Still, without wasting time, he bent down in a power-up stance. Stay back. After warning the Supreme Kai, Raditz clenched his fist and began exhaling. Hiya! Whoosh! A yellow aura burst out of Raditz as his eyes rolled to the back of his head. His hair turned a shining yellow, and his power multiplied by a full 500 times. Incredible! Shin braced himself from the energy storm hitting his face. The sheer power would have pushed him back if Raditz didn't give him a warning. Loosening his fist, Raditz himself crouched down and held onto the Z sword. Shying. Almost as soon as he put a little effort into it, the Z sword began moving upwards. Supreme Kai was thrilled. There it is. The Z sword had begun to move. Amazing. You did it, Raditz. Wait, why did you stop? Go on, pull it out. I am sure you can do it. Supreme Kai encouraged Raditz, who seems to have stopped pulling the sword out after the halfway point. But Raditz didn't move. After encountering this sword, he had his own set of plans. Shin's words alone weren't enough to make him change his mind. You are too worried, Supreme Kai-sama. Buu is already free. Me taking a few extra minutes now won't change anything. I would only lose out on getting a gauge on my strength this way. Whoa. Powering down from his Super Saiyan state, Raditz once more crouched down. This sword is made heavy on purpose. It's exceptionally heavy, and it is just in the right position for me to test my strength. Whoever made this was a master. It would be a shame if I didn't attempt this with everything I have. After trying to pick up the sword, Raditz understood what Whis' intention might have been. This was the same type of training Whis liked to provide with his full body coverage weighted gear. Putting so much weight on a sword is equivalent to forcing the person using it to train their entire body. After all, wielding a sword isn't about randomly swinging it around. The art had its own set of katas. Some of them needed specific sets of muscles to perform. Although it's something which would need time to bear fruit, and that isn't the kind of thing I can rely on right now. So Raditz thought of a compromise. At least he would try to see how each of his transformations are in comparison to each other. Not only key-wise, but overall effectiveness. Still, leaving the Supreme Kai hanging wasn't all that good. So Raditz described to him in the simplest possible way how his transformations worked. Supreme Kai, this is something I call a Kari. It is based on a Scion's inherent Ozaru abilities. Take a look. Growling. Supreme Kai watched with attention as Raditz's aura increased exponentially every second. That's amazing. This is far beyond an additive or multiplicative increase. These boosts aren't possible without an exponential growth. Supreme Kai was stunned. He was beginning to understand why Raditz might be showing him his transformations. Beyond the desire to test himself, there was likely a show of strength. Raditz wanted to show him his strength, both to support him in this crucial time, and to give him peace of mind. You might be right. I have been far too hasty. What has happened already. What I need to do now is train you to the best of my abilities, instead of rushing you as fast as possible. This would only result in mistakes that could have been avoided. While Supreme Kai watched Raditz power up with wonder and slowly realized that Raditz had a better sense of training directions than he did. Raditz had already powered up the maximum he could. Huff, this should be enough. Now let's give it a go. Grabbing onto the sword with one hand this time around, Raditz pulled. Shing. As if the stone was made of butter, the sword was pulled out a third of the distance with exceptional ease, before once more Raditz stopped. Wonderful. This state of yours, it is stronger than your previous Super Saiyan state. Supreme Kai exclaimed after seeing the ease at which Raditz had accomplished the task. Raditz smiled, but once more, he powered down. Huff. I have a good idea on where I stand now. Alright, this is the last transformation. Although calling it a technique is more correct. This time around Supreme Kai didn't rush. He wanted to watch Raditz's last transformation and was prepared to deal with another burst of raw energy. But what came next made him hang his mouth in shock. No aura burst out of Raditz. No ground-shaking events happened. The only thing that changed was his hair and his presence. White hair and gray eyes. This seems familiar. Shin murmured. If he wasn't sensing mortal ki from Raditz, he would have thought a fellow god was standing beside him. Currently Shin had no idea what Ultra Instinct was. He had never completed his training before everyone was massacred. Yet he could feel this form resembled a god. He couldn't wait to see how this silent transformation would perform against the Z-sword. Clutch. And Raditz gave him his wish. Hooking the sword handle with his pinky finger, he gave it a tug. Sheeing. And the entire sword was lifted up. It was as if there wasn't even the least bit resistance. Not even butter-like. It was totally resistance-free. Gulp. Shin gulped. Raditz had now lifted the sword and was playing with it freely, swinging it around faster than he could even see. He should have been happy, but he couldn't help but wonder, can this sword really help Raditz against Buu? He was already strong enough to breeze through this, but it was obvious his champion didn't have the confidence to face Buu yet. Could it be that Raditz is strong enough to defeat Buu already, yet is too wary of the foe because of his words? Shin couldn't help but think like this, because if this wasn't the case and Raditz was still wary for a good reason, then wouldn't that mean he had nothing in his hands which could help against Buu? That wasn't a thought he liked to entertain, so Shin was stuck in his place, confused about to what the future might hold. 139. Hidden Chamber. Supreme Kai wasn't one to keep his doubts aside for too long. If he was having trouble understanding what must be done, he would ask Raditz. He would get all his issues clarified one by one, starting with the most urgent thing. Raditz strength. Raditz, if you don't mind me asking, are you by chance already strong enough to defeat Bu? Raditz's confused look had the Supreme Kai hastily clarify. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you don't want to fight Bu. All I am saying is it possible that, well, that we might be overestimating him? Supreme Kai's guess wasn't wrong. Raditz was in fact overestimating Bu. But that was for a very good reason. He knew the future while the Supreme Kai did not. Bu's problem was deeper than who was stronger and who was not. Kid Bu was weaker than Super Bu. Yet he was the hardest to defeat. Swoosh. Twirling the sword at high speeds, Raditz inserted it back into the ground. Shin had become too careless because of his showing of strength. Turning off his Ultra Instinct, which no longer had as big of a kickback to it, Raditz lightly commented on the situation. Supreme Kai-sama, truth be told, as I am sensing now, I can defeat Bu fairly easily. But that's only the surface level. Our enemy is a mixture of beings, an amalgamation of powers. There exists energy so enormous inside of him that I can't even comprehend how such power can exist. Raditz was talking about the energy of Grand Supreme Kai hiding inside Bu, but he was just speaking randomly, because Grand Supreme Kai's energy was a titanic amount of God Ki, and he cannot sense God Ki yet, much less one hiding so deeply within. Still, there was no other way he could go about it. It's either this or Supreme Kai running off and getting himself killed against Bu, or worse, somehow causing Bu to learn how to use that enormous God Ki inside him. God forbid. Cell had shown what happens when you give your opponents the slightest bit of chance. And from what you have told me, Supreme Kai-sama, it's not Bu's strength that is of concern, it's his abilities. He is a very tricky opponent, although if I stack Akari and Super Saiyan, I can certainly defeat him. Yet defeat him is as far as I can go. I do not have any techniques which can kill an immortal such as Bu. If I can't kill such a tricky opponent after I have made an enemy out of him, he himself will kill me sooner or later. Raditz couldn't say this directly, but he was asking subtly if Supreme Kai can set him up with Beerus or Whis so that he can learn Hakai. But looking at Shin's totally clueless face, he had an urge to smack his forehead. Whatever, it's not like I don't have another choice. The Z sword is one. I can seal him inside of it. And the good old canon alternative is fine too, somehow separating the purest evil Kid Bu and spirit bombing him to oblivion. Meanwhile, Raditz had given Supreme Kai the answer he desired, and he finally understood that his champion was thinking ahead, and not just Bu's current form. Shin felt ashamed at himself for ignoring something so crucial. How could he forget? Bu's greatest issue was his ability to absorb and power up effortlessly. Grand Supreme Kai was someone who could seal Moro, yet he was reduced to getting absorbed by Bu, to somehow hope and cleanse the monster from within. If a master such as the Grand Supreme Kai was reduced to such a level against Bu, taking him lightly because you happen to be stronger than him right now would be absurd. Shin thus no longer dwelled on the issue of strength. He had begun to concentrate on another pressing issue, the fate of the Z sword. Raditz, does the sword have any abilities then? Do you feel something special about it? Raditz, who once more was swinging the sword around to get a feel for its weight, stopped for a second, before continuing his practice while speaking. No, this is a very heavy sword, that is all. But now that I hold it in my hands, I do feel something is off about it. Shin quickly became excited after hearing that. What is it? Is it some kind of spell? Raditz shook his head. It wasn't anything like that. He was only playing along so he could make up a reason to release old Kai. But he still wanted to keep the sword if possible, in case they have to seal Bu inside of it. So another approach was required besides breaking the damn thing. It's nothing like that. It's the make of the sword itself. Listen closely. Ting. Tapping the sword's body with his knuckles, Raditz made it ring in a metallic fashion. Checking the shining sword under sunlight, Raditz smiled. You hear that? It's a dense sound. Now watch this. Bringing his fingers towards the hilt of the Z sword, Raditz flicked the thing. Tang. The Supreme Kai narrowed his eyes at the phenomenon. That sound. It almost sounded as if it's hollow. The guard and the hilt have a hollow space in between them. Smirking at the Supreme Kai, Raditz elaborated. I have built swords before, Shin-sama. Trunks wanted one, so we gave it a go. And this isn't how you build a normal sword. This is a special sword. A sword with a hidden chamber, if you will. Supreme Kai's eyes lit up. He put his fingers on his chin and wondered out loud. A secret chamber hidden inside the Z sword. What could it hold? Your ancestor. Raditz dryly commented in his mind. Whis was an angel, and a classy one to boot. Raditz figured there has to be a better way to release old Kai without breaking a perfectly good sword. And lo and behold, he found one. Just a quick twist in the right direction should open this right up. I am wondering what's inside as well, so let's take a look, shall we? Twisting the handle and the guard of the sword in a special way, Raditz begun to put pressure on the sword, and sure enough, growling, the sword guard begun to grind on top of its grip. In a very smooth fashion, it soon started to slide off the sword. What could it hold? Supreme Kai watched with rapt attention. Like Raditz, he was focusing solely on his part of the work. Buu's current state was something he trusted Kibito with. If they both keep worrying about each other's works, nobody would get anything done. Clang. The metallic sound signified the end of the Z-sword's integrity. Its guard had hit the rocky ground below, and they could now see it, the chamber hidden within the sword. And this secret chamber held absolutely nothing. How could it be empty? Shin grabbed his hair in a fit of frustration. He expected something be there. Anything at all, but this thing was empty. Raditz also observed as carefully as possible, but he couldn't find anything even remotely inside of it. Godkey sure was handy. He can't even sense the old Kai when the guy definitely got free right before his eyes. Ahem. And there he was. Both Raditz and Shin turned towards their left immediately, and found an old-looking Kai standing with his hands behind him. Who are you? Supreme Kai asked in a confused and wary fashion. He had no idea who this old man was and how he managed to sneak up on him. Shin had a feeling he wasn't able to keep up with what was happening around him. He could only dumbly hope that Raditz could think of something in his stead now. 140. Yamcha in danger. Old Kai and Raditz had a strange silence between them. Even though they never spoke a word to each other, they seemed to be having a silent conversation anyway. At least Shin couldn't understand what was going on. Are they talking telepathically or something? I feel so stupid. I should say something. Old Kai looked at Shin that very moment as if reading his mind and frowned in a depressed way. Don't speak. You don't understand anything. How did my junior get so bad at his job? Supreme Kai was taken aback by the sudden scolding. So they can in fact read minds? No, we aren't reading minds. Your face is a bit easy to read, Shin-sama. Raditz's comment was the last straw which made Shin want to dig into the ground. But before he could think of a way to run away from his embarrassment, something clicked in his mind. Wait, did you call me junior? Who are you, old man? Old Kai huffed in a tired way. Was this the current Supreme Kai? How sad. Here he was, standing in Kai clothes before everyone, and the Supreme Kai still didn't understand a thing. Hell, old Kai had observed from the sword how Raditz went Ultra Instinct a while back. That was Ultra Instinct. And this useless Supreme Kai didn't seem to even know what was going on. Shame on him. Sigh. I am also a Kai. I was in charge 15 generations before you. I was sealed within that sword which this young man just released me from. Look, this young Kai in training has already understood this. And then look at you, standing around looking clueless like that. Shin flinched back in embarrassment and a little bit of shock. This was his senior, and Raditz seems to have already figured this out? Actually, now that he is taking a closer look, the old man was dressed in legitimate Kai clothes. It can only be possible if he was also a Kai, coupled with them messing with the mysterious Z-sword and him being so old. This doesn't seem like a stretch to assume. Sorry, I didn't complete my training yet. I am still learning. Ha ha ha. Shin laughed in an embarrassed way, and old Kai twitched his eyes. He had a lot he needed to teach Shin, it seems. But that was for later. He might as well deal with this young Kai in training first. This man was using Ultra Instinct without even knowing what it was. His heart was in the right place as well. This Kai's potential was enormous. He had to guide him well. Maybe having someone this strong on their side will make Beerus take them more seriously and not as a joke. Seriously. That guy sealed him away for so long for something so trivial. Ahem, young man, do you desire strength? I can make you the strongest in the universe. This ability of mine is why I was sealed. So, care to learn from this old man? While the old Kai dropped big news, something much different was going on at Earth. Yamcha was sitting on a rock, vaguely surrounded by everyone. Guys, I don't feel so good. Yamcha was sweating buckets. He was told by this Kai a while ago that Buu was targeting him. Why him of all people? He was the weakest one around, alright. Okay, maybe not weaker than Kaiatsu, but still, damn it, he was toast. Relax, Yamcha. We will take over as soon as anything happens. Goku laughed in a merry way. He wasn't tensed at all as there wasn't any real danger yet, but he was definitely excited to fight Buu. A strong foe different from Raditz would help him get used to new fighting style. This was always good news for Goku, although Chi-Chi always stops him from, "Oh crap!" Goku exclaimed, which made the tense Z fighters almost jump out of their skin. What happened? Piccolo took his stance and growled. Did Sun find something? Before the Z fighters' sweating faces, Goku grabbed his hair. Chi-Chi's gonna have my head. I forgot to revive dash. Swish. But Goku's words were cut short, and so was his plan of revival, because a dense energy presence that required all his attention just appeared besides Yamcha. Buu. Shit. Kibito and Yamcha both exclaimed and stumbled back in a hurry. The Z fighters, who were already wary because of Goku's words, immediately got into their fighting stances. Gohan and Piccolo even powered up to their maximum. Yet Buu didn't seem to even notice them besides a short glacé, after which his entire attention was focused on Yamcha again. Much to the man's despair, a strange silence was around the battlefield. This silence continued for quite a while, before Buu abruptly spoke. You. Loosening his clenched fists, Bu pointed at Yamcha with his yellow-gloved hands. You said there is fun. Bu want fun? The Z-fighters were taken aback by Bu's absurd declarations. But these simple words didn't fool them into believing Bu was someone good-natured. No, they could feel his ki. It wasn't a positive ki. This signified that Bu was not only in an angry mood, he was also not a good person. Everyone was wondering what they should be doing now to break this deadlock. But Yamcha was the one who was put on the spot. He had to do something the most. He was the one who was targeted by this monster after all. Fun? When did I say that, huh? I don't have anything fun here. Yamcha stuttered a bit but managed to talk back against his foe. He figured this would get him off his back, but he was wrong, very wrong. No, fun. Bu mumbled. His fists clenched and his cheeks puffed out. You. Pooh. Steam jets began gushing out of Bu's head from both sides, and as far as the Z-fighters could tell, he seemed to be in a bad mood. Glaring at Yamcha, Bu's body bent down ever so slightly and his narrow eyes opened into a slit. You lied to Bu. Bu hates you. Whoom. A large blast of pink aura gushed out of Bu's body. The sheer blast of this aura pushed back the Z-fighters, and Yamcha, who was standing right before him, was ejected out straight away. Boom. After crashing into the mountains, Yamcha somehow managed to rub his hurt head and attempted to climb back out. But the first thing he saw after poking his head out was Bu's chubby face, staring angrily at him. Oh crap. 140. 141. Bu versus Krillin. The scattered Z-fighters were surprised to say the least. Bu moved too fast and attacked Yamcha way too quickly for them to do anything. And now that he was standing before Yamcha at an arm's length, they didn't want to make any hasty movements. Who knows if Bu will kill Yamcha outright? But while others were stuck, Yamcha himself was terrified and attempted to reason with the monster. Hey, cut it out. All right, I got nothing fun here. I swear. Yamcha spoke in a trembling voice. His current situation was dire. His entire lower body was buried underneath the rubble, while the exposed upper part was directly facing Bu. Yamcha could almost feel Bu's reckless energy against his face. The ki emitted by Bu was so immense that it spooked him hard. Hee. Standing before Yamcha, Bu just laughed eerily. His bent-over form, thin narrowed eyes, and large smiling face was nothing but creepy when viewed from Yamcha's point of view. No, Bu won't forgive you. You lied to Bu. After saying this, Bu's hunched-over form, which was looming over Yamcha, straightened up, as if no longer interested in the man before him. But before Yamcha could breathe a sigh relief, Bu's body bent back even more, and so did the soul tentacle on his head. Making a sound as if he was trying to expel something and was concentrating hard on it, he continued to stand aimlessly in his place. Snap. Before his head abruptly snapped back in place once more. Gulp. Everyone was tense. They didn't know what Bu was doing, but his actions were all over the place. What was that sudden pose? Was he trying to remember something? What was he even doing? Is he all right in the head? Tien whispered. From what they could see, all Bu was doing was snapping his head back and forth. Was he just trying to scare Yamcha? Bu want candy. Bu, who was ignoring everyone, muttered silently, ignoring everything going on around him, and this caused the Z-fighters to sweat drop. Candy? Piccolo's eyes twitched. This threat really didn't seem much like a threat. Even Yamcha was starting to relax a bit. He figured that he still wasn't dead yet, so maybe he can talk his way out of this, if he plays his cards right. Hey man, I don't have any candy on me right now. How about you let me go and I'll bring some for you? Yamcha patiently explained, but Bu just turned towards him and looked at him straight in the eye. No, Bu want candy now, you're candy. Yamcha twitched his eyes. This guy was a fool, wasn't he? Listen man, I am a human, not a candy dash. Zap. A sudden pink beam struck the still-talking Yamcha right in his face, causing him to try and leap back instinctively. Poof. But before his brain could even issue the command to do so, his senses shut down abruptly. Only his ki sense remained, and what he could sense terrified him to no end. What happened? How did Bu get so big out of nowhere? No. It's not Bu who got big, my body. I have become small. I am a piece of candy. Clutch. The small candy fell into the smiling Bu's hands, terrifying the watching Z-fighters. Yamcha! Krillin exclaimed. Bu just made Yamcha into a candy. How could he? Hey, change Yamcha back to normal. Kaiatsu yelled with anger as well. Internally, he gripped his fist with fear. Bu's attack was sudden and swift. He wasn't sure if he could even catch it. Bu, who had just finished creating his first candy in a long time, was confused at why he was being threatened. Did they want this candy? No. You can't have it. Bu made this, it's Bu's. As if he was a child who wanted to hide his food, Bu quickly gulped down the candy after chewing it twice, to the horror of everyone watching. No. Yamcha. This monster. Shit. The Z-fighters who were trying to get Yamcha back didn't expect Bu will eat him without a second thought. Yamcha was a human. This was the first time they had faced off against an enemy who didn't just kill them, but ate them. You bastard. That was our friend, and you ate him. Krillin was angry. He, Goku, and Yamcha were the three oldest students of Master Roshi, and seeing one of them being eaten like a snack really pissed him off. What do you mean? Bam. Boo's words were cut short as Krillin's fists rammed into his cheek, deforming his chubby head beyond recognition. Boom. His body powerlessly crashed into the mountains and raised a dust cloud. But Krillin didn't stop there. Krillin didn't have the desire to understand how or why everything happened. All he wanted to do was beat the crap out of the guy who just ate his friend. Whoosh. Swiftly flying behind Bu, Krillin snapped a kick towards his enemy who was attempting to climb up from the rubble. Crack. And he managed to land the attack on Bu's forearm, breaking the bone in one hit. Boo! Bu yelled out in pain, his still deformed mouth opening wide from shock. For Krillin, this was a great opportunity to attack once more, but the extreme injuries Bu had sustained and a lack of defensive actions on his part made Krillin hesitate. He was slightly unsure if he should continue to attack. Bu wasn't exactly coming off as a spectacular fighter right now, getting caught off guard twice in a row. Weirdest of all, he wasn't even defending himself, as if he wasn't used to defense in the first place. This was extremely weird for a martial artist of any caliber whatsoever. Why is he taking my punches head on? Krillin was confused. After watching his opponent anguish like that without fighting back, he faltered somewhat. He was after all a martial artist his heart. Attacking a person incapable of fighting back wasn't his creed. So kicking him down once more, Krillin knocked Bu to the ground, effectively ending the match. Thump. Watching his Bu body fall to the ground powerlessly, Krillin had a helpless look on his face. Although he defeated the threat, but his friend had to pay the price. Sorry, Yamcha, Krillin said in a sad tone. If only he had taken action sooner, Yamcha wouldn't need to go through all this. At least he did his best and avenged his friend. But now this Bu guy was out for the count. He finished the fight all on his own. Goku will be pissed. Guys, I don't think he will be getting up anytime soon. Sorry. Krillin patted his head in an embarrassed yet frustrated manner. He was so angry he used all his strength in the fight. Seems like it was too much for Bu. This wasn't too big of a surprise. He was one of the strongest warriors besides Raditz and Goku. After becoming an android, his power growth seems to have no end. His full power punch was extremely strong. It was no joke. You sure don't pull your punches? Tien nodded silently. Yeah, you really did a number on him, huh? Goku scratched the back of his head too while looking at the fallen Bu. His head was deformed. His arm was out of shape. He was lying with completely defenseless after the last kick. Krillin also once more looked back at the fallen Bu helplessly. Sighing a bit, Krillin bent down and patted Bu on the shoulder. Hey man, sorry, but you really shouldn't have eaten Yamcha. He was our friend, you know. Twitch. Bu's eyelids twitched after hearing Krillin's words, as if he was attempting to respond but seemed to be too hurt to move. Yuru. Guys, anyone got a senzu? Krillin turned towards the Z fighters and asked in a flustered way. This guy really didn't seem like a threat anymore, so he would rather not kill him pointlessly. He thought for sure Bu was stronger than this from his energy signature, but apparently not. He hoped his friends backed him up on this. Huh, what's the matter? But wide-open eyes and frozen expressions from his friends was the last thing he expected. Did he come off as too careless or something? No, everyone here had been through much more bloody fights. So what? Wiggle. Krillin's thoughts froze abruptly. His expression was suddenly mimicking his friend's, because he just saw something out of the corner of his eyes. A large shadow was cast upon him, a formless goo-like shadow. What? No. After turning back, the only thing Krillin saw was pink. A whole lot of pink goo engulfed him from behind, as if it had a mind of its own. Hey, let me out. Glug, glug. Goku, save me. Krillin yelled out in fear, but his body was stuck to this goo like glue and it was pouring down his throat. This was hard to tear off. Bu, let go of Krillin dash. These words and Goku's angry figure rushing towards him was the last thing Krillin saw before his head was engulfed in the goo. And after that, the only thing there was total darkness. No other world, not hell or heaven, but pure darkness and silence. If someone were to check inside Bu right now, they would find two cocoons, side by side. One holding Yamcha, and another holding an unconscious Krillin. 142. Cyborg Bu. Krillin's pain might have been great when getting swallowed, but at least it ended in a few seconds. The surviving Z fighters, on the other hand, had a whole another thing coming. Krillin. Goku stopped mid-rush. His face had an angry look to it, watching his best friend get absorbed. They had no idea Bu could warp like that. 1 second Bu was out of the game and knocked out cold. The next second he had melted into goo and trapped Krillin. His ki just vanished. Be careful, Goku. Piccolo readied himself and cautiously warned Goku. Bu was weird and had a lot of odd abilities. This move was totally out of their expectations. It was obvious they needed more information about their opponent. This mistake was far too serious and must not be made again. I know Piccolo. Goku uncharacteristically snapped. He was seriously angry at Bu for backstabbing Krillin like that. Krillin was clearly stronger than Bu. He had beaten him in a fair and square way. Bu throwing all that away and just killing Krillin in the blink of an eye was not cool. Goku was not happy. Wiggle. But did Goku's anger really matter to Bu? Bu's goo-like wiggling form had no reaction to Goku's presence. He was doing his own thing without a care. That was enough to answer the question. Bu didn't care about Goku or anyone standing here at all. He was solely focused on digestion. He was digesting a new kind of power he felt from this guy named Krillin. Though this wanton disregard for his opponents didn't go unnoticed. What's he doing? Is Krillin still inside of him? Tien thought while observing Bu. He was much more calm compared to Goku, who had just lost his best friend. He was analyzing the situation in a rational way. And Tien's analysis was right on the nose. Everyone, including Goku, weren't attacking Bu right away because they weren't sure if Krillin and Yamcha were still inside there or not. So even though Bu was but a glob of goo right now, as if trying to form into a new shape, they were stuck. What if they kill Yamcha and Krillin by accident and lose the opportunity to save them? Wiggle. Poof. But their hesitations were solved by Bu himself. Soon his glob-like figure stabilized, and with a puff of smoke, a new Bu emerged from within. What happened to him? Asked Nappa in a wary tone. After the trick he just pulled, Bu was looking slightly different. There wasn't too much difference in Bu's appearance, just the 6 circular incense marks on his forehead was what Nappa was concentrating on. That's that bald guy's marks. I can't sense Bu any longer, just like that guy too. Something has changed with Bu. You there, you better spill what you know. Vegeta twitched his eyebrows and questioned Kibito. He was standing beside him, and he could see Kibito visibly backed away when Bu took on a new form. He must know something. Kibito, who was questioned, also thought of the job given to him by Supreme Kai and forcibly calmed himself. Although they had briefly mentioned Bu's abilities a while back, it was just a rough explanation. They didn't have much time left for thorough preparations back then. But Kibito knew the Z fighters had to know about this ability in detail now, or they might lose more warriors. He has evolved. This is the most potent ability of Bu. He can absorb anything and evolve accordingly. He then takes on the characteristics of anyone he absorbs along with their powers. He should have taken the human named Krillin's strength and added it to himself. Kibito wryly looked at the new Bu, who was standing still as if getting used to his new abilities. He couldn't help but feel it was a kind of mockery towards them, but this thankfully gave them the time to plan. Wait, he gets all of his absorbed abilities? So that's why we can't sense him anymore. Doesn't that mean he has Mr. Krillin's strength and his infinite energy on top of his original powers? Gohan, being the academic guy of Z fighters, instantly understood the trickiest part of this ability. Absorbing Krillin gave Bu all of Krillin's strength. Their inability to sense Bu was bad enough. On top of that, he has Krillin's unlimited energy too. This just went from bad to worse because of one small error. What? Infinite energy? That Earthling had infinite energy? By the Lord of Lords. Do you know what a grave blunder this is? The only way to slow Bu down was to tire him out. And you are telling me he has infinite energy now? Kibito exclaimed with remorse. If he had known that Earthling named Krillin had such abilities, he would never have brought him anywhere close to Bu. And why did Bu absorb him of all people? Anyone else wouldn't have been nearly as much of an issue. It's as if fate itself wanted to kill them. We are doomed. Kibito sat down on the ground, completely defeated. He kept on repeating the same sentence again and again like a broken record. He couldn't even bring up the courage to attack Bu any longer, even if Bu was standing right there. Snap. But the sudden sharp pain on his cheek jolted him out of his hollow-eyed state. Touching his cheek, he felt a hot pain. He was slapped. Pathetic. Just pathetic. You can't even bring yourself to face him when he is standing still. And you call yourself a god. Get lost. We don't need weaklings like you here. Vegeta spat at Kibito and instantly powered up to a Super Saiyan. Kakarot, you heard him. That guy is dead. Don't wait any longer. Goku frowned. He was a little bit unsure if Krillin was truly dead, but the battlefield didn't give him any more time to think. He had a decision to make. Got it, Vegeta, Gohan. Take care of Kibito. Let's go. Whoosh. Goku also transformed into Super Saiyan 2. He had heard Kibito say the current Bu was previous Bu plus Android Krillin. If so, Super Saiyan 2 was certainly not enough to defeat him, but Goku would like to experience it himself first. He can try and go beyond Super Saiyan 2. This was a trump card he unlocked when he went to visit Chi-Chi in the other world. But it burns through Ki extremely quickly. He didn't want to whip it out without understanding Bu's unnatural fighting style. This will only result in his defeat. When the Z fighters decided to attack Bu all at once, he finally paid attention. His narrow eyes stared at everyone and then fixed itself on Goku. This was the guy who was yelling at himself a while ago. Glare. Opening his eyes in a slit, Bu's vicious pupils stared directly at Goku. And then suddenly, he grinned. Swish. Be careful, Dad. Almost as soon as Gohan's warning rang, Buu's figure flashed before Goku. Goku's face was serious, and he swiftly defended against Buu's punch. Bang! But the extraordinary strength behind it caught him off guard. Crap! Goku's body ragdolled backwards. He was hitting the ground and bouncing back again and again. This was such a high-powered hit his arms were still hurting from blocking it. You are Goku? You should die. Although Buu's sudden increase in vocabulary went unnoticed by majority of the Z fighters, Gohan caught onto it and frowned. Everyone else was solely focused on the fight. They were a bit too busy trying to stop Buu from chasing after Goku. You want to play with Buu too? All of the Z fighters flashing before him in a battle state made Buu stop, before he once more smiled eerily and pounced upon Piccolo. It's been a long time since he had his greens. 143. Gang Brawl. Boom. Face-planting to the ground wasn't the best way to start a fight for Goku, but it will have to do. He has become much stronger than before. It's a bummer I can't sense him anymore. Rubbing his hurt head, Goku gingerly picked himself off the crater. His Super Saiyan 2 burst to life once more. Crackle. Electricity crackled around his body and he rushed towards the gang, who were currently getting manhandled by Buu. Ack! Piccolo's face was getting punched in. Buu was using him as a sandbag while his antennae were gripped tightly by him, making it impossible for him to escape. Bang! Another punch to his nose almost cracked Piccolo's neck. Snap! But the side kick from Nappa gave Buu something else to deal with. Piccolo took this opportunity to jerk his head back, Ryup, and tore apart his trapped antenna, getting out of Buu's grip in the most simplest way. Somehow backing away from the battlefield, Piccolo hid behind a rock formation. He was struggling to stand straight after that. Haha. Panting roughly, he wiped the blood flowing down his forehead. The stumps of his tentacles were stinging. The fresh wound was pouring blood non-stop, but Piccolo was a Namekian. His Vitali was second only to Frieza. Slurk. 2 new antennae emerged from Piccolo's forehead, Namekian regeneration working full throttle in his circumstances. Crack. Even his nose and skull's integrity was restored. The compromised parts of his body had begun to heal themselves under his command. Buu. He isn't taking this seriously, Piccolo murmured while peeking out from the side. He could see that Buu wasn't serious about this fight. Even though Nappa, Goku, and Vegeta were ganging up on him, he was not in any danger. He was already stronger than Goku in his Super Saiyan 2. Absorbing Krillin added too much to his abilities. Android Krillin was strong. Really strong. Piccolo had to admit that it would take Goku going full throttle to even think of defeating him. But now that someone this strong had switched sides, he wasn't very optimistic about their chances. Grr, I can only bide my time. Piccolo decided to not get back into the fight right away, but bide his time. This was what Kairatsu and Tien were doing as well. Even Gohan, who was protecting Kibito, was ready to attack anytime. Nobody was stupid enough to rush into a fight. 3 full-blooded Saiyans weren't able to win. Why are you attacking Buu? Buu, who was manhandling all 3 Saiyans, was confused about their stupidly high drive to defeat him. Can't they see he was unbeatable? Why punch him again and again if he can't be punched to death? This was something Buu was clueless about. If he was to fight a similar battle before his absorbing Krillin, he would have been for a possible fight of stamina, but not anymore. Buu even wanted to ask them why they weren't using magic against him. Did they forget to do so? He wasn't sure. Growl. But the sudden growling of his belly took away his attention. He was hungry. He wanted to eat. Buu thinks you should make good candy. Buu harmlessly skidded back from Nappa's punch and seriously considered making a candy out of everyone. He was feeling quite hungry after fighting for so long. TCH, he is thinking about food during a fight. Yeah, how lightly is he taking us? Vegeta and Goku panted slightly. They stopped their assault on Buu for a second to catch their breath. Nappa, on the other hand, wasn't too winded. His ultimate was above Goku's SS2. He was the strongest fighting force of their team. Although the current Buu still surpassed him, this didn't mean he would tire out so easily. Now that only he was still having full steam, he was the one who should take charge, and he had an idea brewing. Kakarot, Vegeta. I got a plan. Nappa whispered to his friends. Yes, friends, that was what Nappa had come to see them as, courtesy of Ranfan repeating it all the time. Plan? What plan? Goku wondered out loud. But before revealing the plan, Nappa first checked if Buu had a tail. He doesn't. Good. He didn't absorb any Science either. I would hate for him to change abruptly like Cell did. Oozuru was Nappa's choice of action. Buu had gotten stronger, but he wasn't so strong that even a 10 times boost on top of his ultimate won't stagger him. I will go Oazuru. Buu doesn't have a tail, so we should be good. I have learned how to trigger that form without a moon now. Even if he had ever absorbed a Saiyan, he shouldn't be able to mimic it. Nappa's idea was good. Goku and Vegeta had to agree. An Oozuru in their mix was beneficial to their fight. Alright, we'll hold him back. You can give it a go. Goku agreed pretty soon. Vegeta didn't have to voice his agreement either. He had fought with Nappa since he could walk. This much synergy was built into both of their instincts. Buu, you want to eat something? Eat this. Why? Vegeta created and aimed a strong ball of ki towards Bu, who simply looked intrigued at Vegeta's words. Was this thing edible? He wondered. As the ball of energy rushed towards him, Bu readied himself with his eyes showing seriousness. Bu, against all odds, opened his mouth wide in a comical fashion. The wideness of his maw resembled a cartoon figure more than it did actual living biology. Don't tell me, he's really going to try and eat it. Vegeta widened his eyes at the impossible display. Surely this would blow his head off. And the situation went exactly as Vegeta anticipated. It's hot. Bu managed to catch the supercharged ki blast with his mouth, widening his eyes while wondering about the taste. But this wasn't food, it was a ki blast, and it did exactly what ki blasts are supposed to do. Boom. It blew Buu's head off with the majority of his neck. Thump. Almost instantly Buu's body fell down as if a puppet's strings were cut. Goku, Vegeta, even Nappa, who was mid-transformation, watched with wide eyes. Was their foe a fool? No matter how much he can heal, losing Buu's head was game over, wasn't it? Unless he is someone like Cell. Vegeta thought, and the loose nerves instantly became tight once again. Nappa, don't let your guard down. Blast him into ash. Nappa didn't expect Vegeta to want to completely annihilate Buu's corpse, but he obliged. He had hesitated once when Cell was around, and that almost got them all killed. No way was he going to repeat the mistake one more time. 144. Kai Mator. Raditz was standing on the Kai's planet with his hands joined together, and two of his fingers pointing forward. This was a pose well known to the Supreme Kais, as this was the technique of their Grand Supreme Kai. Kai Mator. Raditz activated the technique with a serious face. A gust of wind blew, and then there was silence all around. Shin, who Raditz had pointed towards as the designated ceiling target, was standing with an embarrassed face. He had no idea if he should be happy it didn't work or sad that it didn't work. Old Kai, I don't think I can pull this off without God Ki. Raditz scratched his head and looked helplessly at old Kai. Kai Matora was the world's most potent sealing technique, invented by Grand Supreme Kai to seal Moro's magic. This worked exceptionally on magical beings. It was a technique crafted especially with magical beings in mind. But it had a one big downside. It needed God Ki to function. But it should have worked. I have seen that guy create this technique. I know how it goes. The user either needs to have God Ki, or they need to be a serving Kai. Either of those two conditions are okay. Old Kai walked slowly towards Raditz and held his arm, checking the energy within. Although it's not right to say that a Kai position is a good substitute for God Ki, it should still work. The position of Kai always provides a steady supply of power. That's where your healing abilities and Kai comes from. Old Kai continued to provide Raditz the necessary knowledge. Those are Kai techniques, you know, divine techniques. Don't you wonder how you can use them without God Ki? That's how. It's the position support. Kai Matoru is something you can learn. Try again. You just have to feel your connection with the Supreme Kai's realm. There is nothing better than this against Bu. A technique specifically meant to seal magic is your best bet. Raditz gave a wry smile. It's not that old Kai was wrong. This was in line with his interests too, as he wanted to seal Bu away if possible. But there was a problem. This technique was hard. Very difficult. Although his inexperience with being a Kai was a major factor in his inability to pull off a godly technique. I swear Kai Matoru is as hard to pull off as Hakai. Or I am way off the mark, and I just happen to suck at understanding my connection with the Kai realm. Whatever it was, this didn't please Raditz. His men were fighting tooth and nail against Bu right now, okay? And he, their king, is stuck trying to learn a technique. I feel the original Gohan's mood now, sitting around doing nothing while Bu caused a havoc. Even if this is to gain strength to counter Bu, it's a bad feeling anyway. Just when Raditz decided to try and use Kai Matoru again, Shin, who was his target, looked at the flashing crystal ball. Oh, it's a call from Kibito. Old Kai also noticed it, and started walking towards the ball. Take a look. Why is he calling all of a sudden? Raditz followed along too. By the time he arrived, Shin had sat down and was turning on the transmission. Kibito isn't talking. He is showing a live view. But what exactly is going on there? That's Bu. And that's Nappa Oozuru. Are they trying to blast him into ash? Will this work, Supreme Kai-sama? Shin frowned, looking at the headless mage and Bu lying without movement. He should have felt great seeing this, but he didn't think this will work. I don't think it will, Raditz, I remember. Grand Supreme Kai had blown him away completely, but Bu turned into a pink gas and then revived once more. Frankly, I am clueless if anything other than sealing would work, but those warriors have surely fought well. Pushing Bu so far, not many could do such a thing. Raditz folded his hands and watched with concentration. He wanted to observe how Bu's gas to solid transformation worked. He had such a gas form in the original when he was released from his egg, and was blasted to ash many times before, yet he came back again and again. But this was only valid for regular Bu. Kid Bu can still be killed when blasted to ash by a spirit bomb. Pure evil versus pure evil cleansing energy. His gas form was strong, but this was its one weakness. It would be helpful if he could observe it up close before he went to fight Bu. Who knows if Bu can counter Kai Matoru? It's always good to have more options. He's doing it, He has charged up enough energy to decimate Bu. Old Kai nodded. This giant Ozer had a good control over his ki. There was no sound coming from the crystal ball, but from the surroundings they could gather enough information to form such a sound in their heads. The energy beam released by Nappa had rushed towards Bu like a bull and hit his unresponsive body. Boom. Right upon contact, a hemisphere of energy covered the area and the Z fighters quickly made distance because of the sheer heat. Everyone, Raditz company and the Z fighters, all watched with bated breaths. What was the end result? For Raditz, he was curious what way will Bu survive this. It was definitely a given he will survive this, but how will he do that, was the information he wanted. This was intel about Bu's fighting style after all, crucial stuff. A few minutes went by in silence as they waited. The energy dome had vanished by now. But weirdly, so had Bu. There's no sign of Bu. Could they have made it? Shin, as always, jumped to a hasty conclusion, something which old Kai corrected him on pretty quickly. Nonsense, don't you see some of them are still on guard? Agreeing with old Kai, Raditz narrowed his eyes, much to Shin's dismay. He was Raditz's boss before old Kai came along. Now it feels like he was the youngest guy here. He needed to work hard. Nothing's happening yet. It's weird. Is Bu planning something? Old Kai wondered aloud. Shin looked confused too. Maybe he was beaten too badly and isn't able to reform quickly? He gave his own solution. Old Kai and Raditz both felt it was feasible and nodded. But this was a mistake. A mistake made because of a gap in information. Neither of them knew Krillin was absorbed by Bu. He no longer had any issues about energy or stamina plaguing him. This was one of the core reasons they missed the small piece of pink gum wiggling towards Gohan and Kibito, a slyly chosen place away from the battlefield. Maybe we can use this time to remove Bu from Earth. What the hell is this? Shin, Raditz, and old Kai's eyes shrunk. Their crystal ball had suddenly turned light pink. Within a few more seconds, this pink had completely taken over the crystal ball's image. Why? Why did it turn pink? What happened? Shin was shaken, and the soon cut-off connection with Kibito only worsened his fears. He had an inkling of a feeling what could have happened. He just didn't want to face it. Kibito. Bu likely got him. Shin was like an open book, and after reading said open book, Raditz had his suspicions. What is it? How did everything become pink all of a sudden? Lowering his head in a daze, Shin stayed mum for a few seconds before sighing. Kibito was projecting the image through him, so if everything went pink, I am afraid that is what Kibito saw. He might have been absorbed by Bu. A still silence was maintained amongst the trio for a while, before old Kai collected himself back up. Get up, sitting around won't do you any good. You are a supreme Kai. You have your duties. Old Kai got up and turned away from the crystal ball. As for you, Raditz, we are going to continue to train the sealing technique, while he will go down and clean up his own mess. Shin looked at old Kai with hurt. How was he supposed to handle this by himself? Raditz too didn't think this was a good idea. If Supreme Kai dies out there, he will be forced to take on the Kai position by old Kai. And he wasn't interested in doing such a thankless thing. The life link with Beerus alone was a no-go for him. Too many gods wanted Beerus dead. Old Kai, this isn't good. If Shin-sama goes over now, there is a high chance he will not make it. How about this? I can make a short trip over, make sure everything is safe, in and out. Glaring at Raditz in disappointment, old Kai hit him on the chest with his aged fists. No. It's the current Supreme Kai's job. You are no longer a mere mortal, Raditz, but a Kai in training. You must learn to behave yourself. Sighing in a tired manner, old Kai said something cryptic. We aren't the only gods in existence. We don't have as much pull as you might think we do. Don't overstep your boundaries, Raditz. You risk not only your life, but the entirety of creation. Raditz folded his hands in a show of confusion, but his mind was working frantically. Is he talking about the Omni King? A chance that Grand Priest sees a Kai randomly overstepping his bounds? Can't think of anything else that might nuke the entire creation, unless he is dumbing down the concept of Universe 70 for me, and actually means Beerus will Hakai me. Both of those things were possible. Beerus does not like Kais putting themselves in danger. He hates that, and Omni King, that guy is plain dumb. No use speculating about him. Still, I believe neither Beerus nor Omni King cared about anything during this time frame. They are pretty lax in general. Or Zamasu wouldn't be able to do what he did. Confirming that he should be in the clear, regardless of whether or not he interferes, Raditz shrugged. He could compromise a bit, but old Kai needs to see the ongoing problems as well. Fine, I won't go over outright. Shin-sama can go on his own, but Shin-sama has to show what's going on first and foremost. And if I sense any danger, I am going over regardless of what the rules might entail. Old Kai looked at Raditz for a few seconds, something which Raditz didn't back down from either. Sigh. Shaking his head, old Kai waved his hand and turned away. Fine, have it your way. Kids these days. Both Raditz and Shin smiled a successful smile when old Kai went his way. No way, they both really wanted to go for one reason or the other. This was good news for both of them. Raditz, I will leave first. Please try to get Kai Matoru in control in the meantime. You can train with peace of mind. I will not let anyone else in your group die. Nodding his head, Raditz lightly said, Good fight. Kai. With a nod of his own, Supreme Kai vanished. But was it as a good thing for him to go there now? Only time can tell, because the Z fighters themselves were in quite the pinch right now. A little while ago, before these events took place, when the crystal ball had turned pink on Raditz's side. Gohan. Son. Piccolo and Goku both exclaimed in shock. Anger and fear was filling their minds. Dad dash. Gohan couldn't continue to talk. He was supposed to keep Kibito safe and had done a fantastic job of alerting everyone when Bu attacked. Sadly, that was also the reason for his downfall. Bu didn't let go of Gohan either and engulfed both him and Kibito at once. Wiggle. Two large blobs of pink goo were floating in the middle of the battlefield. Gohan and Kibito were being absorbed by Bu. Goku. I can't feel their energy signatures anymore. Bu is absorbing them too fast. His absorption rate has gone up. Tien and Piccolo both reminded one after the other. They had teamed up once more. Every remaining fighter stood together, lest Bu sneak attacks them one by one again. Kakarot. What's the idea? He has absorbed your son as well as that guy. The power boost he will receive is too high for us to control any longer. Nappa Oazra growled. He was crouching down behind everyone and acting as the protective umbrella for the group. His giant body being a good natural barrier against Bu's absorption. Wiggle. Poof. But just Tien and Piccolo predicted, before the Z fighters' wary eyes, the two Bu balls joined together and merged into one big Bu ball, which vanished into a puff of smoke, and there stood a new Bu once more. His look had changed again, reflecting the upgrades that had taken place within him. He's got Gohan's shirt on. His head tentacle increased in length too. And those earrings are that cowards. Bu has absorbed them. Vegeta narrowed his eyes and checked the changes within Bu. This guy, he was treating them all like food. Bu didn't start attacking immediately. He once more stood still in a daze after his absorption. But this time around, the Z fighters knew they had to think fast. Goku, we have to leave now. Piccolo growled. This was their best shot at getting away. Given Bu's massive power boosts, they weren't going to be his match. And leave where? You think this monster is going to let us go? Vegeta snarled at Piccolo. This was quitter talk in his books. But it wasn't only Piccolo this time around. It was Nappa too. Vegeta. Piccolo is right. We can't fight this. Let's fall back. Do you sense his presence, Vegeta? Even without sensing his ki, that presence alone is overwhelming. Let's wait for the king. We will die pointlessly if we rush over now. Oozuru Nappa was making quick decisions. It might seem like cowardly talk for a Saiyan commander, but he was not having a good feeling about this. He was a potential unlocked Oozuru, and he was protecting the group from harm's way by his body. He was the only one who clearly felt how much Bu's aura had changed. But Goku struggled with this decision. He didn't think leaving Bu here was a good idea. The second they leave this place, Bu would go for the regular Earthlings. There is no time to waste, Goku. We have to move now. He is regaining his senses. Piccolo grabbed Goku's shoulder. Hard. Goku needed to clearly think this through. Gohan's death was clouding his mind. Turn. But their time was up. Bu had slowly turned his head towards them, and within those narrow eyes one could see the desire to hunt. Damn it. Grab onto me. Everyone. Goku finally had to make a hard decision. They had to survive this, or there would be no future for Earth. Whoosh. Bu's eyes narrowed. His food just vanished. That is instant transmission? Bu mumbled in his regular voice, but he had intelligence shining within his eyes. Gohan's knowledge had been absorbed by him, and so were his abilities. This increased his intellectual capabilities like never before. Goku. It's not only you who can use instant transmission. 145. Hidden intentions. Gasp. What happened to you guys? And where are the others? Goku's team teleported without a word and appeared before Bulma, startling her. Huff. Huff. They were killed by Bu. We had to fall back. Goku panted slightly. He was but thoroughly winded from fighting Bu, and the exhaustion was slowly catching up to him. What? And you guys ran straight to me. What happens if Bu follows you? Bulma's angry yells startled the Z fighters, before all of them quickly lowered their ki and hid their aura. Bulma's reminder had helped them remember that Bu had instant transmitted to Yamcha. This one act of recklessness could have wiped them all out, if not for Bulma's reminder. Haha, sorry about that. I just remembered your ki on the go. But we have powered down. Bu shouldn't find us here. Goku explained to Bulma, who rubbed her forehead. You aren't even sure and you ran here anyway? The kids are here, Goku. Goku could only bite the bullet and try and convince Bulma that everything would have been fine either way. Not much he could do. He made a blunder, and he had to roll with it. The Z fighters silently went towards the other side of the room and scattered themselves on different places, deciding to stay away from Goku's mess. Piccolo, who had taken the balcony as his place of residence, was looking out, pretending to look out of the lookout. Tien was silently leaning on a nearby corner with Kairatsu. His eyes sometimes darted towards Piccolo's figure. He wanted to say something to Piccolo but couldn't. He could see Piccolo was sad. Gohan just died and he had to watch that happen. But Tien wasn't much of a talker. He figured after struggling for a while that Piccolo will handle the stress on his own. Now only few of them remained: Vegeta, Nappa, him, Kairatsu, Piccolo, and Goku. Tien, what do we do? Not being taciturn like him, Kairatsu broke the silence. Goku and Bulma also stopped their back and forth after hearing this. Everyone else concentrated on the duo as well. Tien, who was the center of attention, all of a sudden twitched his lips. If he was a lesser man, he would have not made it under this pressure. He was what? The second weakest in the group. What would he know? But he can't exactly say that now, can he? So he simply closed his eyes and took the plunge. We have to go back. We can't stay holed in here all the time. Nappa nodded. Tien's words were correct. They can't do that. But what was the alternative? I don't have a problem with going over now, but what do we use to defeat him? Vegeta folded his hands and continued after Nappa, as if they had practiced all this before. We were prepared, and he still took us down. Going over without any kind of advantage is meaningless. Goku nodded lightly while he came and joined Vegeta on the couch, much to the latter's disgust, which Goku promptly ignored. I have an idea, guys, but I am not sure I can defeat him within time, even if it works out. His Super Saiyan 3 was his only hope, but after how strong Bu had become, even his full-power Super Saiyan 3 wouldn't be able to defeat him head-on. There was only a chance that he might be able to pull it off. Those weren't very good odds. If possible, he would like to have something else to rely on. Whoosh. Everyone, sorry for being late. Can you please tell me where Kibito is? Everyone's attention, which was focused on Tien a second ago, instantly shifted towards the sudden figure arriving within the room. The Supreme Kaishin, yet nobody was sure how to give him the news. Nobody except Vegeta. He's dead. And that was all Vegeta was willing to say before he stopped caring about the devastated looks of Shin. Thankfully for Shin, not everyone here was a prick. So after some support from Goku and the rest, he recovered. Sitting on another sofa, Shin tried to sense Bu, but just like he was told before, he could no longer sense him. This is troubling. We might not be able to make out his actions like this. Vegeta frowned. Even this Kai couldn't do anything. Not that he expected anything much from these losers. What is Raditz doing? He should be able to handle this with his strength for a while, until we think of some way to defeat Bu. Vegeta asked. If Raditz was here, the biggest issue of holding Bu back would be solved. As long as that trouble was solved, they might be able to think of something on the go. Shin heard the question and didn't hide anything. Raditz was his hope in this scenario as well. Raditz is learning a technique, a sealing technique which seals away magic. This is our weapon against Bu. But the technique is difficult. It takes time to master it. If nothing else, we should do our best to make time for Raditz until he manages to learn the technique. This sudden information was a good piece of information. The Z fighters could finally see a ray of hope once again. But this also caused Goku, who was brainstorming ideas to defeat Bu in various ways, to wake up. Sealing? Hey Supreme Kai, I know of a sealing technique too. Will that work? Shin was startled and then instantly energized. So were the rest. Goku might have a way out. Please tell me about it, or better yet, show me. Shin exclaimed. But Goku rubbed his chin in a distressed way. I have never used the technique. It's with Master Roshi. Wait a second. I'll bring him here. Swish. With that declaration, Goku left the room, straight towards Master Roshi's house. Swish. And brought back the utterly confused Master into the room. Master Roshi, please show us the evil containment wave. Goku made a praying gesture before the twitching Master, who soon read the room and decided to go with the flow. All right. But you didn't have to bring me here. Raditz knows the technique as well. You could have just asked him. This caused Shin to frown, because Raditz had never mentioned this technique to them. Now why did that happen? Raditz didn't strike him as a guy who would go out of his way to help you. Raditz would rather end this as soon as he could. So Supreme Kai didn't voice his own thoughts. He decided to sit and watch before making a judgment. He knew he was being judgmental, but he had seen far too many people corrupted by Babidi. His trust was shaky at best whenever Babidi was involved. He even doubted himself sometimes. So although he knew he might be overreacting, he couldn't take any chances. He had to make sure that Raditz was on their side, and wasn't secretly made a Majin when Babidi infiltrated Earth. 146. Bu's friend. The Z fighters soon made space within the living room. Everyone stood safely on the edges while looking at Master Roshi. Although Tien and Piccolo knew what was coming, they were not going to dive in and explain Roshi's master's technique for him. Nobody other than Roshi was qualified to explain Mafuba. Roshi, meanwhile, understood the sentiment, but twitched his lips watching the strongest beings in the universe run away from him. If all of you leave, who am I going to seal? I need some kind of a container too. A paper seal is also needed for the final step, but we can skip it for now. Everyone looked at each other, hesitating and taking up the role. Watching all this, Goku appointed himself. No, he wasn't being noble or anything. He figured he would be able to learn how sealing feels like without any danger. Learning new moves and its counters was always fun for Goku. Seal me, Gramps. Goku smiled and raised his hand, ready to get sealed within whatever they could find. You? Rashi looked at Goku for a second before shaking his head. You won't work. The technique simply won't have a big effect on you. Goku tilted his head in confusion. A question mark appeared on top of his head. Rashi noticed that and saw everyone else's desire to know this as well, so he simply explained what was going on. This technique was created by my master. Its name is Evil Containment Wave. It contains evil, it's in the name. As such, this works best for people who are truly evil. The more evil you are, the stronger the hold of the seal will be on you. Remembering Goku managing to climb on top of the Nimbus, while he himself fell straight down, Rashi turned his head away. And you, Goku, you are too pure of heart for my technique to have any kind of long-lasting effect. I might succeed in putting you away in a bottle if I try, but it won't hold you in for even a few seconds. Goku scratched his head. It was such a bummer that he won't be able to feel the technique. Meanwhile, Shin realized something and breathed a sigh of relief. He felt guilty for doubting Raditz. He remembered he had told Raditz that Bu was a mixture of evil and good, where good was dominant after Grand Supreme Kai got absorbed. That was how Bu's rampage had stopped all those years ago. He had mellowed down. Raditz must have known Bu's good side, and his magic wouldn't let us seal him away with such a technique. That must be why he didn't risk it and decided to go for the Kai Matora. Everything becomes easier when magic itself is being sealed. Bu is a magical being, so if a technique seals magic, it doesn't matter if Bu is good, evil, or even alive. His strength will be sealed regardless. Understanding that, Shin decided to no longer look at the technique. They had more important things to discuss. This was an emergency after all. It won't work. Let's stop this trial. Shin attracted attention with his statement, then proceeded to clarify further. Raditz must have thought of this, but he never brought it up. I am sure there must be reasons for that. We can't depend on a technique that might fail at the most crucial time. Not going into too much detail, Shin told his theory in a generic fashion. The hope which had just awakened was once again dampened because of that. Oh man, I was sure it would have worked. Goku rubbed his neck. While the performer himself, Rashi, didn't say anything, he happily sat down on the stool because he no longer had to work. He was a retired man. It wasn't his place to act. Just as the Z-fighters were wondering what they should do now, a phone rang. Satan is calling. What does he want now? Bulma thought aloud and picked up the call. It's terrible. Bulma-san, call boss. There is a pink monster destroying the city. Boom. It. He's looking at me. Ahem. Hello there, mister? Are you perhaps a fan dash? Beep, beep, beep. Everyone's eyes bulged. Bu was destroying the city so soon? Damn it. Piccolo growled. His face was clearly showing his anger. Can we call Raditz? Bu will destroy everything like this? Bulma asked Shin, who shook his head. Disturbing Raditz now would be worse. Bang. Vegeta's fist hit the wall, cracking it ever so slightly. We don't need Raditz. I am an elite, damn it. Not some weakling cowering behind his king. Whoosh. Vegeta didn't say another word and powered up into a Super Saiyan, but Nappa swiftly did the same and held Vegeta's shoulder. Don't rush over. At least check the situation. You alone will only become food for him. Queen, can our satellites show what's going on down here? Nappa's suggestion had Bulma's eyes sparkle. Yes, I almost forgot about them, wait. Bulma quickly went back inside the tool storage area and brought back a mini projector. Here. Buzz. The projector buzzed to life, and soon a crystal-clear image was before them. A ruined city with flames raging everywhere, crushed buildings, and broken structures. That monster, he only knows destruction. Tien frowned. He felt disgust for such an act. His previous sensei was such a person, but his new values docent let him agree to such actions. There, Nappa, is that enough for you? Now let me go. Wait, Vegeta. Key signatures aren't vanishing anymore. Bu has stopped. Goku stopped Vegeta with a frown. His 2 fingers were on his forehead. He was sensing the city's life signature since the moment he got the news of Bu arriving there. And the life loss had suddenly stopped. So what? He might be thinking of attacking another place. No, this isn't like that. Goku once again denied Vegeta's idea, but before Vegeta could blow up on him, Bulma had tweaked the image to scan the area. What is that? Is that Bu? Bulma asked, seeing a pink fat man walking around with another large muscular man and a green hunched figure. That's Satan? And a Cyberman? What are they doing with Bu? Vegeta asked in a confused tone of voice. As far as he knows, Satan was weak. He shouldn't have had a chance against Bu. Is Bu playing with the Cyberman? Nappa was even more confused watching Bu play with the Cyberman. He was treating the Cyberman like a dog, and the Cyberman had no problems with it for some reason. Bu has stopped his massacre. Everyone, who is that person? He has managed to make Bu stop. Shin was super excited. Earth was really a treasure trove. So many masters were settled on this planet. First Raditz and now this man. He must be insanely strong for Bu to stop and talk to him. 147. Magic Control. In a ruined city, one man, one monster, and one plant were walking down the road. A setup for an excellent joke, though the situation was anything but. Mr. Bu, that is the chocolate factory I told you about. Trust me, you won't need to turn people into food ever again. Satan chattered endlessly. Bu kept a smile on his face and nodded along. His left hand held the Cyberman Kaba, his new pet. This was a fun outing for Bu. Satan, what kind of chocolates? Bu asked, his mouth already watering from imagining the tastes. Satan straightened himself and ignored the feeling of dread creeping onto him. What if this doesn't satisfy Bu? He wondered. He was afraid. He knew if he doesn't satisfy Bu with his food, he would be the food. It's all kinds. Endlessly talking to keep Bu busy. Satan cursed his luck. He surely hoped there would be sweets there which made Bu happy. While Satan was busy with saving the world, the Z fighters had gathered on the lookout. Vegeta, why do you get to go in first? Goku argued with Vegeta, who was adamant about going in first. Nonsense. I am a super elite and you are a clown. I am going in first. The rest of the Z fighters and Shin looked on with sweat. They weren't able to get a word in this argument, but someone had to say something. So Shin decided to take on the accused role of mediator. Goku-san, Vegeta-san, we should make haste. Bu is only momentarily stopped. And besides, the time chamber can hold two at once, I presume. Would it not be better for both of you to go in together? Goku and Vegeta paused for a bit and went back to arguing once more, but they had warmed up to the idea. That much was possible to see. Shin breathed a sigh of relief at that. At least he wasn't yelled at. Safe. I am sure they will manage. You sure you don't want to go in Nappa? Shin mumbled, and then asked the other top tier about his plans. Nappa was a loyal man, and in this show of loyalty he had decided to remain guarding Bu's location and making sure his king's home is away from any harm. Shin wanted to know if he still had kept the idea of guarding against Bu. If not, they would make other arrangements. But it seems his worries were unnecessary. Yup, someone needs to take care of Bu if he goes mad again. Nappa grinned, not looking the least bit bothered by losing a chance to get stronger. Shin was familiar with the Saiyan kind by now. He understood Nappa certainly desired to be more powerful, yet he threw that away for his duty. Truly remarkable. All right, enough talk. We have work to do, men. Keep yourselves hidden. We will tail Bu. Nappa hit his palm with his fist. A happy grin was on his face. He felt as if he was commanding a squad again, just like the old days. AI. Kairatsu played along with this act and saluted, causing Nappa to laugh loudly. Ready? Blast off. Whoosh. The remaining squad flew towards Bu's location, but their speed wasn't very fast, as they were suppressing the majority of their ki. Shin silently watched them leave, then turned towards Earth's guardian, Dend. You don't mind me staying here, right? I would like to keep watch over them. Dend immediately shook his head. What a joke. This was his big boss, the Supreme Kai. How dare he mind his stay? No problem at all. I'm glad to be of service. Dend's predicament wasn't unnoticed by Shin, but this was normal for him. He was after all the Supreme Kai. Lower realm gods were always acting as such in his presence. Wonderful, I shall take my seat. Shin sat down and Dend had to sit beside him too. He can't leave the boss alone to go do something else now, can he? The Kai realm. Kai Mator. A yellow beam sprang out of Raditz's fingers. Bang. And hit the old Kai straight on his chest. Old Kai staggered back, but soon a small ball of light purple energy came out of his body. This is difficult to handle. Raditz frowned. He was trying to handle the small amount of magical energy the old Kai had, but it was proving to be a hard-to-do task. Huff. Concentrate. It's your first time handling magic. You will get the hang of it soon. Don't let go. You are almost there. Raditz twitched his lips. This was a chore. He so hoped this could be a regular slugfest. He would eradicate anyone in that. But magic, that wasn't his forte. He never had the chance to learn it beyond knowing how it feels thanks to launch. And now having to learn how to manipulate the energy and seal it on top of that had proven to be a chore. But so what? This wasn't something that stumped Raditz. No matter, it's a little more grind. Nothing I haven't done before. He had no cheats. He had climbed all the way up here through sheer effort and smarts. He was never one to shy away from hard work. Glaring at the unresponsive ball of magic under his hold, a vein popped up on his forehead. Hey, move. You shitty magic dash. Move. Ayakak. Raditz's black hair began flashing yellow in his anger. The Saiyan inside of him was angry at this foe. Old Kai immediately wanted to berate Raditz for losing his calm, but when he saw the ball of magic begin to twitch, he watched with rapt attention. He's doing it. In such a state nonetheless. Science. I wasn't aware their ability to grow under pressure was this immense. It's an utter shame they were wiped out. The universe's level wouldn't have fallen so drastically if they were still around. Old Kai was sad for the eradication of a species with such potential, but there was nothing he could do now. It's a good thing he could have their best, and their king is a Kai now. After this Bu debacle was over, he would show Beerus. He would show him how good Kais could be. There he goes again. Raditz mumbled and looked the other way. This wasn't the first time old Kai had daydreamed about teaching Beerus a lesson. His presence amongst the Kais had given a very big confidence boost to the old man. Nothing he could do about it. Whoom. Crap. Gotta focus. Raditz steadied himself. He almost lost control of the energy, but managed to hold on once more. It won't be long. As soon as he learned to do everything without failure, he would rush back to Earth. His senses were always spread on Earth even now, so he knew that people were dying. Both regular people and his squad had casualties. The sooner he arrives, the lesser they have to sacrifice. But there was another reason he wanted to hurry back. Bu feels weird. I wasn't able to feel him at all a while ago. Yet now I can sense this pure negative energy pulsing on Earth. Something is happening to Bu. Teach. I gotta hurry. These guys won't be able to hold on. 149. The Bu versus Evil Bu. Bu was getting kicked around left and right. All his bravado wasn't enough to provide him with the victory he desired against Evil Bu. Evil Bu took all of his evil energy for himself, and due to his nature as a fusion being, evil energy is what he had in excess. Universe is mostly filled with crooks like that. Positive energy was only recently supplemented because of the Z fighters and some of the rare good guys he had managed to absorb throughout his life. Grand Supreme Kai being the biggest provider for this type of energy. Buh. A candy beam was ejected from Bu, which was nimbly dodged by Evil Bu. His yellow patera earrings shaking in the wind while his gray, emaciated skin stank of rot. Zoom. A candy beam of his own was released by Evil Bu, which Good Bu dodged by a hair's breadth. Rumble. Another swift attack came right after Bu's dodge, hitting him square in the face. The Z fighters had already moved away. This wasn't a fight they could participate in any longer. The attacks were far too destructive, and most of all they had no idea what they should do. Both Bus looked like bad news. The best course of action was sitting and waiting for them to duke it out while they tire each other. This should weaken Majin Bu considerably. By then they can sweep in and do something about him. Bang. Although it wasn't only the Z fighters who were watching the fight, from the lookout Shin continued to monitor them as well. It hadn't been long since their fight began, yet it was certainly nearing its conclusion. That vile Bu is overpowering him. He's got Kibito's clothes on him too. Shin muttered. He had a sudden impulse to go and stop this from happening for some reason, but he held it in. He also thought that fighting between two Bu was good for them. And if the Bu who was giving out an energy signature wins, that means Bu will no longer have unlimited energy. It wasn't much of a handicap for someone like Bu, but it was a plus nonetheless. Kao-sama, he's got him. Dents called out the distracted Shin, and Shin looked down once again. Then he saw it. There stood only one Bu, the Evil Bu, and he had a candy in his hand. Clutching the candy in his hand, Evil Bu wanted to eat the entire thing in a heartbeat. Now. But he couldn't. The Z fighters standing around found this the best time to attack. They wanted to attack before he ate the candy. Not that it mattered much, as long as they get him when he is tired and hasn't absorbed Bu. H. Nappa fired a mouth blast at Bu from far away. Tien, Piccolo, and Kaiatsu followed up with their own key attacks. All of them made the decision to attack from a distance, refusing to go near him in case he absorbs them too. Evil Bu felt these attacks coming and was startled. These weren't any run-of-the-mill attacks. They were highly powered key attacks. This would incapacitate him for a while if he was hit. After all, he hadn't digested Bu yet. His gray body didn't have as much regeneration as Bu's pink body does. They had timed this well. It was a trap. He could no longer move out of the way. Evil Bu wasn't one to show expressions on his face. His always upset-looking face didn't change much even when the light of the attacks was illuminating him. Sizzle. Or the heat of the attack was burning his skin. He kept on looking without emotion, but if someone was to check inside his head, they would find he was panicking. His mind was screaming. He was just like the original Bu when he found out that he was trapped inside the time chamber. Anger and fear overtook his mind, and then, his magic started to react. Woo! The patera hanging from his ear swung as if wind was flowing through them. Yet this slight swinging of patera was all Bu needed to get out of this. Swish! As soon as Bu vanished, Shin jumped up from his position. That was Kai. I felt Kibito's energy. How come? Shin didn't have to think twice. He knew this was Bu's absurdly adaptable magic again. Bu changed to match his desperate circumstances. He was able to dig out the Kai's techniques sleeping deep within him, Kibito's absorption no doubt helping him greatly. He was now standing above the Z fighters, flying in the sky, looking down at them with his always upset face. Crack. Bu didn't waste time. The first thing he did was eat the candy Bu in one crunch. Hawa! And finally made a sound. An excitement-filled yell emerged from his dry throat. which was gaining vitality every second. Damn it, he escaped. Nappa cursed. He could see Boo's dead gray skin changing color. It was slowly turning pink. His energy signature was flipping from sensible to non-sensible. His clothes had begun to change. All kinds of changes were taking place inside Bu. But none of the Z fighters felt the creeping dread that Shin was feeling, because he knew something they didn't. Bu's energy signature wasn't just changing from sensible to android's non-sensible, but was flipping to one more thing. Godki. More specifically Grand Kai's Godki signature, something he didn't think he would feel ever again, especially inside Bu. It cannot be. Absorbing Kibito let him dig out that power. We are all doomed. Thump. Sitting his butt down on the lookout floor, Shin grabbed his hair. The Z fighters might not be able to tell the difference between God Ki and Android Ki, as both were impossible to sense for them, but he could. I should have known. The moment I saw those patera on his ears, I should have known this could happen. Shin frantically tried to think of a solution, but couldn't think of anything as Bu's energy had finally managed stabilized. And it was the key signature of Grand Kai. Ask them to run, at once, call Goku and Vegeta out, we don't have time. Shin snapped at Dind, who was also sweating from the sheer amount of God Ki emanating from Bu. His attire had changed to match one of Kibito's, but the earrings, they had turned green instead of yellow. A sign that Bu was once a Supreme Kai, Din thought. He didn't know this wasn't a regular old Supreme Kai, nor was Bu ever one. But this was the utilization of Grand Supreme Kai's powers through Kibito. Unlike the original, Bu's God Ki wasn't split into Kid Bu and subsequently destroyed. It was well within the now transformed Super Bu, and had come to the surface once more due to the current circumstances. I am going. Mr. Popo, take them out of there. Din finally managed to snap out of that godly pressure and began to run towards the time chamber. Mr. Popo gave a curt nod and flashed towards his flying carpet. Meanwhile, the Z fighters had kneeled down on the ground. Their bodies were sweating uncontrollably. Everyone had wary eyes as they didn't understand what this presence was and how it was rendering them so afraid. Everyone except Piccolo, who was sweating the most and almost unable to speak. He was once a kami. He knew how to feel God Ki, and he could feel it. It was that feeling. Bu had unlocked God Ki way before he could ever do in canon. 149. The Bu versus Evil Bu. Bu was getting kicked around left and right. All his bravado wasn't enough to provide him with the victory he desired against Evil Bu. Evil Bu took all of his evil energy for himself, and due to his nature as a fusion being, evil energy is what he had in excess. Universe is mostly filled with crooks like that. Positive energy was only recently supplemented because of the Z fighters and some of the rare good guys he had managed to absorb throughout his life. Grand Supreme Kai being the biggest provider for this type of energy. Buh. A candy beam was ejected from Bu, which was nimbly dodged by Evil Bu. His yellow patera earrings shaking in the wind while his gray, emaciated skin stank of rot. Zoom. A candy beam of his own was released by Evil Bu, which Good Bu dodged by a hair's breadth. Rumble. Another swift attack came right after Bu's dodge, hitting him square in the face. The Z fighters had already moved away. This wasn't a fight they could participate in any longer. The attacks were far too destructive, and most of all they had no idea what they should do. Both Bus looked like bad news. The best course of action was sitting and waiting for them to duke it out while they tire each other. This should weaken Majin Bu considerably. By then they can sweep in and do something about him. Bang. Although it wasn't only the Z fighters who were watching the fight, from the lookout Shin continued to monitor them as well. It hadn't been long since their fight began, yet it was certainly nearing its conclusion. That vile Bu is overpowering him. He's got Kibito's clothes on him too. Shin muttered. He had a sudden impulse to go and stop this from happening for some reason, but he held it in. He also thought that fighting between two Bu was good for them. And if the Bu who was giving out an energy signature wins, that means Bu will no longer have unlimited energy. It wasn't much of a handicap for someone like Bu, but it was a plus nonetheless. Kao-sama, he's got him. Dents called out the distracted Shin, and Shin looked down once again. Then he saw it. There stood only one Bu, the Evil Bu, and he had a candy in his hand. Clutching the candy in his hand, Evil Bu wanted to eat the entire thing in a heartbeat. Now. But he couldn't. The Z fighters standing around found this the best time to attack. They wanted to attack before he ate the candy. Not that it mattered much, as long as they get him when he is tired and hasn't absorbed Bu. H. Nappa fired a mouth blast at Bu from far away. Tien, Piccolo, and Kaiatsu followed up with their own key attacks. All of them made the decision to attack from a distance, refusing to go near him in case he absorbs them too. Evil Bu felt these attacks coming and was startled. These weren't any run-of-the-mill attacks. They were highly powered key attacks. This would incapacitate him for a while if he was hit. After all, he hadn't digested Bu yet. His gray body didn't have as much regeneration as Bu's pink body does. They had timed this well. It was a trap. He could no longer move out of the way. Evil Bu wasn't one to show expressions on his face, His always upset-looking face didn't change much even when the light of the attacks was illuminating him. Sizzle. Or the heat of the attack was burning his skin. He kept on looking without emotion, but if someone was to check inside his head, they would find he was panicking. His mind was screaming. He was just like the original Bu when he found out that he was trapped inside the time chamber. Anger and fear overtook his mind, and then his magic started to react. Woo! The patera hanging from his ear swung as if wind was flowing through them. Yet this slight swinging of patera was all Bu needed to get out of this. Swish! As soon as Bu vanished, Shin jumped up from his position. That was Kai. I felt Kibito's energy. How come? Shin didn't have to think twice. He knew this was Bu's absurdly adaptable magic again. Bu changed to match his desperate circumstances. He was able to dig out the Kai's techniques sleeping deep within him, Kibito's absorption no doubt helping him greatly. He was now standing above the Z fighters, flying in the sky, looking down at them with his always upset face. Crack. Bu didn't waste time. The first thing he did was eat the candy Bu in one crunch. Haoa! And finally made a sound. An excitement-filled yell emerged from his dry throat, which was gaining vitality every second. Damn it, he escaped. Nappa cursed. He could see Bu's dead gray skin changing color. It was slowly turning pink. His energy signature was flipping from sensible to non-sensible. His clothes had begun to change. All kinds of changes were taking place inside Bu. But none of the Z fighters felt the creeping dread that Shin was feeling, because he knew something they didn't. Bu's energy signature wasn't just changing from sensible to android's non-sensible, but was flipping to one more thing. Godki. More specifically Grand Kai's Godki signature, something he didn't think he would feel ever again, especially inside Bu. It cannot be. Absorbing Kibito let him dig out that power. We are all doomed. Thump. Sitting his butt down on the lookout floor, Shin grabbed his hair. The Z fighters might not be able to tell the difference between God Ki and Android Ki, as both were impossible to sense for them, but he could. I should have known. The moment I saw those patera on his ears, I should have known this could happen. Shin frantically tried to think of a solution, but couldn't think of anything as Bu's energy had finally managed stabilized. And it was the key signature of Grand Kai. Ask them to run, at once, call Goku and Vegeta out, we don't have time. Shin snapped at Din, who was also sweating from the sheer amount of God Ki emanating from Bu. His attire had changed to match one of Kibito's, but the earrings, they had turned green instead of yellow. A sign that Bu was once a Supreme Kai, Din thought. He didn't know this wasn't a regular old Supreme Kai, nor was Bu ever one. But this was the utilization of Grand Supreme Kai's powers through Kibito. Unlike the original, Bu's God Ki wasn't split into Kid Bu and subsequently destroyed. It was well within the now transformed Super Bu, and had come to the surface once more due to the current circumstances. I am going. Mr. Popo, take them out of there. Din finally managed to snap out of that godly pressure and began to run towards the time chamber. Mr. Popo gave a curt nod and flashed towards his flying carpet. Meanwhile, the Z fighters had kneeled down on the ground. Their bodies were sweating uncontrollably. Everyone had wary eyes as they didn't understand what this presence was and how it was rendering them so afraid. Everyone except Piccolo, who was sweating the most and almost unable to speak. He was once a kami. He knew how to feel God Ki, and he could feel it. It was that feeling. Bu had unlocked God Ki way before he could ever do in canon. 150. The birth of a Majin. Super Bu. An existence created from the fusion of good Bu and evil Bu. A state where evil Bu is dominant instead of good Bu. The strongest version of Bu, who only got stronger as he absorbed more and more people in the original. Yet this time around, he barely needed any strength boost, as what he running on was God Ki. Courtesy of one man. This is Grand Supreme Kai. You were inside this whole time? Super Bu felt his godly state and spat in irritation. After finally defeating that good Bu, he had thought all was over, that his influence was gone for good. But no, that man's power lived on. It was still within him, attempting to balance out his pure chaos, stopping him from turning back into Kid Bu. Yet, Bu stopped caring about it after some thought. No matter what, now that he was in control, he could grind away Grand Supreme Kai's influence bit by bit. But before that, Super Bu smirked, looking at the Z fighters before him. All of them were on their knees due to his new godly presence. I could go for some dessert. They would make delicious snacks. Bu felt a burning desire to eat, a good thing to do in a new body. These guys might be incapacitated easily right now, but he was sure they would taste good. Swish. Bu's eyes narrowed at the sudden arrival. He looked on with his head tilted. A man standing on a carpet had teleported besides the Z fighters. You aren't affected by my presence? Bu asked curiously. The man who was nonchalant about this whole thing was picking up the Z fighters and putting them down on the carpet one by one. After Bu's question, he turned towards him. Yet his hands did not stop, nor did his face change expressions. No, I am appointed by heaven to serve Kami. I do not fear your godly presence. Mr. Popo gave a curt reply to Super Bu. Then before he could figure out what to do, Mr. Popo deposited the lassie fighter on his carpet. Goodbye. Swish. And vanished into thin air, causing Bu to stop mid-smile, speechless at how his food ran away before his very eyes. After a few more seconds of leaving his mouth open, Super Bu's face morphed into an angry one. You tricked me. He was tricked. Bu understood. That bastard. He took his lunch. Unforgivable. You cannot escape. Swish. Triggering a kai of his own, which was unknown to Mr. Popo, Bu ran after him. If only Mr. Popo knew Bu had unlocked the technique of gods on top of their ki, he wouldn't have chosen to take them to the lookout right away. But sadly, he didn't know this detail, resulting in the grave blunder of Bu reaching the one place he shouldn't. The lookout. A place far away from Earth, on a large planet full of life. A regal man with a regal tail stopped mid-sword swing, with absolute shock on his face. Old Kai. The hell is that presence? Raditz dropped the magic-sealed Z-sword on the ground and snapped his head towards Old Kai. That? No doubt about it, that's the Grand Supreme Kai's energy. No, it's not his energy, it's mixed, that's Bu's energy. Old Kai looked serious. He didn't speak much as he was lost in his thoughts. Raditz didn't expect him to speak either, and didn't care enough to make him do so, as the crystal ball sitting beside them was flashing, before pink overtook the entire picture once more. Just like it did once for Kibito. That idiot. He got himself killed. Old Kai almost jumped. That was Shin's transmission, his last moments so to speak. Raditz didn't react weakly either. He frowned and quickly began sensing the lookout. They died. Announced Raditz with his fists clenched. Piccolo, Tien, Nappa, Kairatsu, Dend. Every single key vanished one by one in a few seconds. Old Kai, I am leaving. Old Kai looked at Raditz as if he had lost his mind. Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? Didn't you see how easily Bu took care of everyone there? You will get slaughtered. Old Kai expected Raditz to see reason, but Raditz shocked him with his behavior. And then what? Sit here like a coward? I have already learnt what I need to. I am no longer watching from afar. I am the Saiyan King, Old Kai. Regardless of how old his body was, Old Kai hastily ran towards Raditz and stood before him. No, you still haven't fully mastered Kai Matori yet. We can't risk losing you too. It would spell the doom of everything. Not even that guy can stop you if he absorbs you. Old Kai was telling the truth. He wasn't sure if even Beerus can stop Bu's rampage in case he absorbed the legendary Raditz. It's much better if they let Bu destroy what he wants until Raditz learns Kai Matoru. They had to look at the bigger picture. All would be good if Raditz just listened to him, but Old Kai turned silent when he saw Raditz look at him without any expression. I am leaving, Old Kai. This isn't the time to count my chances so thoroughly. Bu has become too much of a threat, and all this happened because I wanted to use the path of least cost. Clenching his fist, Raditz shook his head. No more. Our plan would have worked if Bu simply stayed away from Earth like I had intended. But we both know how that played out. Forcibly continuing our training has turned out to be a terrible idea. Earth is essentially a buffet for Bu. Every single second I waste here, the situation is getting progressively worse. Turning away from Old Kai, Raditz sheathed the Z-sword. I am done wasting time, Old Kai. With that, Raditz walked away, leaving the silent Old Kai. Loosening his clothes, Raditz started to remove his yellow patera earrings. After this spat with Old Kai, he was no longer going to wear Kai clothes. If being a Kai meant acting like this, he didn't want to be a Kai. God techniques be damned. Wait. Old Kai's shout stopped Raditz from continuing his shawl's removal. Looking at the Old Kai, Raditz asked, What is it? I won't stop if that's what you want. Old Kai twitched his lips and shook his head. I don't expect you to. Sigh. Turn towards me. Raditz didn't understand what this was all about, but out of respect for the Old Kai, he turned. Huh. The Old Kai raised his hand and suddenly yelled, coating Raditz in green energy, which swiftly broke away like eggshells to show Raditz, with a whole new set of Kai clothes. Old Kai gazed at Raditz with a soft look in his eyes, before it turned hard again. There. Now go. Raditz looked confused, before he grabbed his earrings and took a side look at it, causing his eyes to shrink. This is... Old Kai twitched his lips while shaking his head at Raditz's reduction. You think I'll let a guy like you leave our Kai's group? Never. I have promoted you. You are no longer an assistant Kai. Raditz's eyes almost popped. Wait, that's a terrible thing. He didn't want his life to be connected to Beerus. Old Kai scoffed at Raditz's expressions, as is reading his mind. That idiot Shin told you about our connection, didn't you? You don't have to bother about that. It's a connection only meant for Supreme Kais. Assistant Kais and Grand Supreme Kai are exempt from the connection. After a few more seconds of silence, Raditz's eyes widened yet again. But this one was from surprise rather than shock. But you promoted me. If I was the assistant Kai before, Old Kai completed Raditz's sentence for him. Yes, you are the Grand Supreme Kai now. This position requires all remaining Kais to choose one of them for the job. Now only you and I remain, and I have chosen you for the task. You can't back out now, it's over. Although Old Kai put it like that, Raditz knew this was a big deal. This position was that of a true god without any dependencies. He could feel his ability to sense God Ki had become acute to the point he can see Buu's shape back at Earth. Because of his assistant Kai position, he could already sense God Ki even without having it himself, as he was essentially a god. Now that power was multiplied many times over. Not only that, he retained his ability to heal too. This one was also inherited by Fat Buu courtesy of the previous Grand Supreme Kai. So it's Grand Supreme Kai versus Grand Supreme Kai? Is that what you really wanted to see, old man? Old Kai snorted softly without answering. Go. Raditz flashed a smile at the old man and teleported away. Kai Kai. His words echoed as he left the planet. Old Kai looked at the empty space for a second before shaking his head. Raditz was a man of action and a good-hearted warrior. Old Kai would be damned if he holds him back because of the Kai duties. So Old Kai did the unthinkable and reselect a Grand Supreme Kai for their universe. No Kai of any universe ever does this easily, as the Grand Supreme Kai has authority only below that of the Grand Priest, equal to that of the guardian angel of the universe. Not even God of Destruction himself is higher than this position, as he is connected to the level of Supreme Kai, not the Grand Supreme Kai. What he essentially did was select a boss for himself, Beerus, and the universe to boot. In case his selection was wrong, everyone would suffer. But he had faith he wasn't wrong. He had faith his choice would bring forth progress, not destruction.